trying to educate you.
Steve, don't speak over the intro. Welcome to another edition of the ROTL UK podcast, episode 125. What part of 8-0 do you not understand? My name's Matthew Turner, alongside co-hosts Anthony Fitzpatrick, Stephen Collins, and Ryan McCluskey. How are you all doing, boys?
Say the original title, please.
I don't know what it was.
What do you mean you don't know what it was?
It's not there.
You've replaced that.
No, I haven't replaced that. You might be looking at Steve, mate. Look at that face. You can see he's done it.
Oh, is it Steve?
Yeah,
well,
it's not
all right.
me.
Steve's cool. That's fine. Good one, Steve.
I plead guilty. Again.
Right. How's things going, boys? It's been a week.
These titles are getting worse.
You're not wrong.
I'm delighted because Huddersfield lost in the cup final. That made my whole weekend.
On behalf of me and Matt, we're not talking about football this week. Thank you.
Nah.
Ryan, can I just say,
I wonder if you were too.
I find it deeply pathetic that you're making fun of another football team's loss. I think that's really, really poor show.
I'm not going to comment on it. Yeah. There's things I want to say, but I'm not going to.
It hurts me how much of a big man Steve is trying to be about this.
Just look at the look on his face. He's enjoying it. He's
most Premier League fans don't have a leg to stand on, so most of them should just keep quiet. Because
Posted one picture on Twitter on Saturday night. I don't need to say any more.
If you guys are not aware, don't know what we're talking about, Liverpool lost in the Champions League final on Saturday, and Ant's beloved Chesterfield lost in the National League semi-finals to try and get into the professional leagues again. So it's been a bad day for our favoured teams. But we are not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about the first 8 games of the 2022 season for the Detroit Lions. We're not having a brief look at the schedule and going, yeah, we might win that one. Yeah, we might lose that one. Oh, it's a bit of a weak schedule. We are going into this in a little bit of depth. We're looking at free agency period for these teams. We're having a look at the draft and how they did. Then we'll look at our overall roster and really kind of dig a bit deeper into how all of this might go. It might be a bit early, but it's never too early to look at quite how good this season, or badly, this season could go for the Lions. But we're going to start off with a little bit of news. But first, a bit of housekeeping. Just want to say hello to everyone who is joining us live for this one once again. Don't forget to join us in our Discord channel. We've got the College Football Podcast. Like and sub if you can. That would be great stuff. Don't forget to add as well Lions Nation Unite. Download the app. Subscribe to them on YouTube. Herman Moore and Micro Mike and all the good guys on there. And we are a Twitch affiliate too. So if you have got a free sub through Prime, please don't be shy to throw it this way. But let's get into the news now. We've got a few guys in the chat there just saying hi. Dan Spanos, Debt Fan Man is there. Super Saiyan Lions, what is up, boys? I heard Ted Lasso is going to coach the next season. Yeah, that'd be a good signing for United, wouldn't it? Anyway, well, Ten Hag would be doing great. Anyway, enough football chat. Let's go into the news. And the league has changed the rules regarding returning from injured reserve and also the number of practice squad players allowed. Last season, you could return any number of players that you liked. I think it was due to COVID. But now it's returned back to its old rules and then actually been changed. So instead of waiting a minimum of 3 weeks to come back, it's now 4 that you have to wait. And you only get 8 instances of a return. So before, I think it was 3. Now you get 8. You can use multiple instances on one player. So a guy can get injured, be out for 4 weeks, bring him back, get injured again. That's your second instance if you want to use it again on the same one. So individual ones instead of it being based on players alone. But I think we could all agree that that's probably a good thing. Injuries are a real thing in this league and seem to be ever more apparent. But also the rehabbing is getting much better too, and players are actually coming back and there's less season enders. So for me, that's good news. And 16 practice squad players now allowed, up from 14. It was elevated to 16 during the 2020 COVID year, fell back to 12 last year, and now up to 14. David Reinfurt69 subscribed at Tier 1. It's his 3rd month. Hello to you, sir. Thank you very much for that as well. Really, really appreciate you doing that. Boys, some common sense moves For me, what do you think?
No, I'd have stayed at pre-COVID. Like I said, I think there were necessary changes. I think the fact that IR rules were fine because you had to think carefully about who you wanted to bring back. Like I say, now can bring back every man and his dog back. So I think it defeats the purpose, really. So some teams will find a way to manipulate this. They will put players on there that don't really belong on IR, but just want a little cushy break so they can miss a stretch of games and be ready maybe for the playoffs at the end of the year. So no, I would have kept it as it was originally.
Very long gap. I don't like the fact that it's gone up to 4 games now for IR because that's a quarter of your season you're missing, and you need to be able to have a bit of flexibility with your roster where you can put the guys onto a short-term IR, and it's meant to be short-term IR. 4 games is effectively a month, and that ain't short-term. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of that, but I guess they will counteract by saying the bigger practice squad, you keep more players there, so therefore you can have a little bit more depth on your team. So I mean, I don't know. I don't like the fact it's gone to 4 weeks. So if you've got some critical players up in there and you could be missing them for a long time, you're going to have to almost carry them now if they're off for a few weeks. And it's critical places on your roster. So I don't know. I'm with Ryan. I just think they should really have left it how it was. I think that worked well. Although I do like the expanded practice squads. I feel it's been a bit too short-handed, and you can potentially lose talent if you can't fit it all on there. So I like that.
Yeah, I think like most sporting organisations, it's just so tempting, isn't it? From the NFL's point of view, there's just the sort of constant meddling and changing the rules, and sometimes, as Ryan said, like fairly unnecessarily. But that's what leagues do. That's what these organisations do. I'm sure there's people on the payroll that are paid to fiddle about, and the fans generally hate it. So yeah, it's one of those.
Fair. I'm totally off the mark then. But that's not strange. Last bits of news really revolve around OTAs. The first 3 days of that for Lions were last week after we talked on Monday. It's the first time that the vets and rookies have officially trained together, although obviously some work has gone on privately in the off-season between guys. One notable comment I saw was that Coach Shepard has praised linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez as one of the smarter young players I've ever been around. He's been around some really good guys, especially, during his LSU years. So I think that's really, really high praise. But other notable things in there, boys. Melifonwu taking reps at safety. Will Harris taking significant reps at cornerback. What do you make of what's happened in OTAs so far? It's still early days, and we're only getting snippets of information from the hours or so that the media guys have to one of the days of OTAs. So what do you make of what you've heard?
Not surprised what we've heard with Malcolm Rodriguez. We've been big proponents of the day 3 picks here on this pod. I know a lot of others have been sort of casting him to one side, saying they don't think much is going to come from him. But Malcolm Rodriguez is going to be great for this team, and they've already said now they can sort of leave him to do what he wants. He's smart enough to be able to be trusted with the schemes, with the plays, and that already is a big indication of the kind of guy we've got late in the draft. People are really going to be shocked by him, and I think he's going to have a massive impact for us this year. So it was great to hear that from the coaches. The coaches have seen what we've saw, and there's a great player in there. They just need to get him right with him, but I fully trust them to. So great to hear about Rodriguez. The iffy thing, obviously, we've pontificated over that for a long time, whether he moves into safety, whether he plays at corner. I assume, given maybe the lack of depth there, or maybe with a lot of bodies at corner, it helps to be able to put him into safety. Sometimes, potentially, if there's a lot of other guys vying for the position at corner, gives us a bit of safety depth as well. So, it's good to see him again trying there with both. As for the guy going in the other direction, you say that Will Harris is taking snaps at cornerback. I call it stealing snaps at cornerback off far more deserving people. So I think if he's going to go to corner, I think he's going to get beaten out very easy because there's a lot of talent there in camp, and I'd expect him to be cut pretty quickly, especially with the amount of money we can save on that contract. There are far better value contracts on this roster for, like we were discussing before the pod, cornerback 6, if that's what he is, which he potentially is. Don't need to spend all that money on him.
It's a double-edged sword. Iffy going to safety makes a lot of sense. He's long, he's rangy, he can play. I think he'd be a good option at free safety, and he could rotate and come down in the box. I think he'll see far more snaps moving there because he's going to beat out CJ Moore or Juju Hughes. He's got a good chance of taking one of them spots straight away. One of them will be resigned to special teams. But then Will Harris taking more snaps at safety. That makes me shudder. Like I say, that makes me want to say a little prayer. I think Madonna said it best. Like I say, it worries me. I don't like Will Harris. I don't want him on the team. They seem to like him. I think he's an absolute liability. I sincerely hope that if he makes the 53, you just don't see him on the field. I'm not saying I don't want him on the 53 because that makes me sound like a bit of a douche, but I don't want him on the 53. So if someone could step up and take that spot, then that'd be great. So I'm looking at the likes of, let's say, hopefully Jerry keeps him in his place.
Yeah, I think if there's any time to experiment with, Will Harris, it's now and not during the season. So I'm kind of like okay with it because the coaching staff need time to have a look at the players, and what I don't want to do is for that experiment to start in week 1 against Philadelphia Eagles. So I'd rather get that out of the way and get all of this stuff sorted. I think the positive news for me, first of all, everyone seems super impressed with Aiden Hutchinson in terms of how he's turned up and how he's kind of playing. He's not playing like someone that was picked second overall. He's playing like, an undrafted free agent that is looking to win his spot. And that seems like quite universal from across the Detroit sports media in terms of how they've been talking about him. And I think the other thing, which is pretty positive, is apparently the amount of trash talking between the coaches is absolutely off the hook. And that kind of bodes well in terms of team spirit. Apparently, like Juice Staley and Aaron Glenn and Aubrey Pleasant have been absolutely going at it like constantly, and that's going to be good for team morale and also good for Hard Knocks as well.
Cannot wait to see it. The other news that kind of filtered out from camp is this potential position move for Julian Aquara. So kind of moving off the edge, or at least taking less reps on the edge and perhaps moving a bit more off ball to this sort of hybrid Sam role. And I just don't get it, boys. Like, I get that he's not a 4-3 edge player. I get that. But we are going to be playing some 3-4. Like, we're not abandoning a 3-man front. It's just slightly changing the balance, perhaps. So there's going to be reps there for him, albeit limited. But I mean, if anything, is he not a Will? He's an undersized guy who's fairly quick. Do you really want to match him up against running backs, tight ends? It just sounds like a recipe for disaster, unless I'm totally misreading what Sam means in this context.
Don't think you are. I mean, we all sort of suggested that maybe this was what they tried to do with him, move him to outside linebacker and get some work there for him. But the trouble for Aquara is he's got a problem there. Just so happens that he's called the problem. James Houston is going to be that guy for us. That's what he did at Jackson State. Played on the edge, played some outside linebacker, and he's perfectly suited for that role. He's bigger, he's stronger, which makes me more confident that he's going to be better when it comes to matching him up against running backs, etc. That's James Houston's job. That's what he did in college. Hit running backs, hit them hard, get in the backfield, does the job of an outside linebacker. And I think that's where he is going to flourish. And for me, I can see him beating out Julian Aquara for that spot. I don't think we need to carry 2 guys who do that because we've got a lot of depth at edge. I don't think the need is there, especially with all these blitzing linebackers that we've got in there as well. Guys like Rodriguez, like Jared Davis, like Derek Barnes. I just think there's, too many cooks in there, and I just don't think Julian's going to fit into that. But I mean, if he can beat James Houston out, then I'm fine with that. But from what I've seen, I think James Houston's going to win that spot, and I genuinely don't think he's going to make it. You know, one of the best abilities in the game is availability, and he's not had it these last few years. 2 of his last 3 years, he's been injured, and we just can't afford to wait for some of these injured guys. We've got to start giving new guys chances. So I think Houston's going to beat him out to that role.
I think this smacks very much of them desperately trying to find something that Julian Aquara can do before he gets cut. Like, I think we talked about this last week in terms of the 53-man roster, but you know, it feels like he's a square peg in a round hole. There's too much competition at edge. He's not really an, OLB. So what they're going to do with him, and it's almost like they're going to try and find something for him to do, for him to stay on the roster, but I'm struggling to see it.
That's what exactly my thoughts were. Reeks of desperation. This is Jared Davis all over again, trying to get a player that can't do what they ask him to do to try and keep him on a roster. He is going to be that specialised that I don't see either of them making a team, because you have to almost create a position for them, because they can't play the positions that they so desperately want them to try slot into. And when you do that, that's when mistakes happen, unfortunately.
I mean, for me, I said this last week, but this smacks to me as the next Deshaun Hand. We know the talent is there with Julian. We know he can be really good on his day, utilised properly, but he's never fit. And, I said a year before Hand got cut, we should have already cut him then. We persevered too long, hoping the injuries would clear up, hoping that talent would go from inconsistent to consistent, and they become the player we thought we could become. I just feel like if we go another year with him, we're going to regret it in the long run if he's not healthy. It's going to be a year wasted, and potentially, if Houston gets caught, a potential perfect replacement for him cut off the squad, waiting for him.
I mean, I just feel really sorry for him, because we say the best availability the best skill is availability. But he was that year's Levi Onwuzurike. Like, we knew he was a project when we drafted him. We knew that he had a couple of injury issues when we drafted him. And I know it was the previous regime, and they can just go, well, we just don't like the pick. But we knew Levi was a project. I don't think Ryan perhaps has not been the most complimentary to Levi in saying that he could be gone this time next year. But I think the majority of us kind of feel like Levi was a project, and that this is the year where he's going to potentially come on strong. Now, Julian just had the misfortune of going that second season with a little bit of an issue as well. I do feel like in a perfect world, I would be giving him this year to see whether he could do it before cutting him this time next year. But it ain't a perfect world, and we've got a load of edge players who believe it. So that's his problem. It's not that he's a bad player at all. It's just he might find himself the odd one out.
Exactly. I think we have to start taking a hard line with injured players. And, as unsavory as it is, again, we just had far too many examples over the years. Kerryon Johnson, we waited forever to get healthy, and he never could get healthy. I think at some point we have to say, look, it's just too much for us. We need to move on and find players who don't have the injury histories, who are going to be able to come in and be available all week, and who will flash more than inconsistency. Because that's what it is. We're hoping that, like you say, in an ideal world, we hope he gets another year. But what if it's the same? Then it's just like we've fallen into it again. We've given up a year where we kind of knew what was coming, but we thought, oh, well, we'll just give it a bit of a try. And I'm at that point now where it's just like, no, there's a lot of edge talent here. There's a lot of outside linebacker potential talent there. Let's get them in. Let's get them playing. Because, I mean, if Okudah has another bad year with injury, we're all saying cut, and that's 3 years into his rookie deal. But that's how cutthroat we have to start being. This team has to progress forward, and it can't afford people who are injured all the time.
All right, let's move on to our main segment then. We're going to move on and talk about the first 8 games of the 2022 NFL season, kicking it off with Game 1 at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. And we'll start off by looking at the draft class. Only 5 picks for the Philadelphia Eagles, taking Jordan Davis at 13, Cam Jurgens at 51, Nakobe Dean finally stopped his drop at 83, Kerryon Johnson at 181, and Grant Calcaterra, the concussion machine himself at 198. So only 5 guys there, boys, but impact players in positions of need for the Eagles. Jordan Davis going to slot in alongside some big guys on that defensive line. Nakobe Dean, linebacker, was a big need. If he can get over that injury, that could be the steal of the draft, potentially. And Jurgens, I mean, they've got a fantastic centre in there, but they do need an heir apparent, potentially. You know, that's what all the talk is there. I'm not massive. I don't know a lot about Kion Johnson, and we've talked about Calcaterra already on this pod, but what do you guys, first of all, make of their draft class? How do you think they did?
Yeah. I'm not hugely a fan of it. Like I say, I agree you need an heir apparent to a centre, but that's looking further down the line. Could they have picked someone a bit better, or someone that could make a bit more of an immediate appearance than Jurgens? I think they probably could. Jordan Davis, very solid. Like you say, he'll fit into that defensive interior. He'll add a bit of juice to a defensive line that it's a bit long in the tooth, isn't it? They've been aging on defense now for a number of years, and they've not managed to replace them. Nakobe Dean, it's hard to know because, like you say, you believe all these things that apparently he's riddled of injuries. Some don't think he'll make any impact, or he'll struggle to have a long, prolonged NFL career. So he slid really far. Like I say, he's got potential to also prove someone wrong day one. Could be an immediate impact starter and make everyone look silly that passed on him. Grant Calcaterra, that'll turn out to be a very unwise pick. It won't last. Injury status, unfortunately, will catch up to him. He is, what's his name? Who was the old Washington tight end that just won't retire? He's
Jordan
him 2.0. Yeah. He's Jordan Reed 2.0. He'll be gone. First injury he gets at serious, he'll retire. Unfortunately, because he's already been retired once, and that is the biggest red flag you can have, pretty much. That he's had brain injuries in the past. So for me, very shaky. And Kion Johnson, I couldn't even tell you who that is. So for me, for 5 picks, they did not maximize value at all. But I think Jordan Davis will be the best of the class. Like I say, he will add instant upgrade, and he will potentially make that a good defensive line even better, because they do have a pretty good front.
Yeah, I mean, like Ryan said, when you look at it, you're kind of a bit meh as to what they did. Now, you can only do so much with 5 picks, and obviously only 3 of them in the top 100. The last 2 were quite late. So, I mean, it all depends what you're going to get. I mean, if this class realizes its full potential, then obviously Jordan Davis is going to be a problem for everybody in the years coming. He has the athletic ability and the sheer strength to be a nightmare for years and years to come. Cam Jurgens, Nebraska make their linemen very, very strong, very tough, very powerful. He's learning off a great center there. So if he is trained correctly, then like I said, they're going to have a great heir apparent going forward. And Dean, if he can, overcome those injury issues, potentially a first round pick they've got in the 3rd round there. So it could wield a good source of success for them going forward. But as it stands, I don't see much impact this year. I don't know whether Jurgens is going to play or not. I would assume not, especially not against us week 1. I don't think he'll be playing unless there's an injury to Kelsey. We might see Dean depending on what's going on, but yeah, a lot needs to go right for this class to be good for them, I feel.
Yeah, I think in terms of the draft, probably the biggest story really is in their free agency acquisitions in terms of, the AJ Brown trade, and obviously taking on Hassan Reddick as well. In Ant's right, I can't see Cam Jurgens really playing more than a few snaps, because I think Kelsey is, this is his swan song season. I can't see Kelsey being there in 12 months' time. And yeah, I think this is more about a team that is trying to build in the right way. I think the Eagles are seen as one of the better organizations in terms of short-termism versus like a long-term plan. But it still feels like a team in transition. However, having said that, last season, the Eagles was really firmly on my kind of radar as a very beatable team. And we ended up getting absolutely spanked by them. And I think the Eagles' defeat last season, was it week 7, week 8?
Just before the bye, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was kind of like when the crushing reality of where we were kind of came home. Because they're one of those teams that we should just absolutely be beaten if we are going to be competing. If we can't beat the Eagles, they're the kind of definition of like a beige team in its current sort of iteration. But I don't know. They've got talent. They've got Darius Slay. They've got Devonta Smith. I'm not convinced about their quarterback. This is going to be a real watershed moment for the Lions, because if we turn up in week 1 and get beaten by this mob, then that's going to send A, the fan base into a complete meltdown, and B, major red flags everywhere.
I mean, so
Sure. I think they're, weirdly enough, they're very similar to us, I think, in what they do. And obviously they've invested a ton in the trenches this year. But I mean, you look at the offense, they've got great offensive line, a quarterback who there's a lot of questions about. He can win you a game on his day, but he can absolutely lose you a game on his day as well. Decent running back room, good set of receivers, a standout tight end on there. I think the offenses are actually they're almost as even as you're going to find with any other team in this league. It's intriguing. They think Campbell and what's his face down there seem to be going on it sort of the same way about building their team.
So I've got a weird take, I guess, with this, which is that I have the Eagles being both massive draft losers and massive draft winners for two different reasons. So the first reason, them being a winner, is what Steve mentioned, the trade for AJ Brown. Them trading away, what was it they traded? They traded away 18 and 101 for AJ Brown, who is, for me, fringe top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. I think that's cheap. I mean, no matter what you have to pay him, I think is cheap for what you.
I don't think he's
top
a
10,
top 20
top
at a
15.
push.
No way.
Top 20 at a push.
Okay, just my opinion. But one of the big reasons that I think that they lost the draft is the Jordan Davis pick and trade. So I know a lot of people are in love with Jordan Davis, but unless he can improve his anticipation of the snap count, he's going to be a half a second behind everyone. And I'm going to run with that take as long as it takes for him to fix his mechanics. Should be easily fixable. He didn't do it at Georgia. But the second part of it is they were at 15. And they traded up to 13 with the Texans, who were desperate to trade down. And they traded 15, 124, 162, and 166 to move up 2 places. I know they were desperate to get Jordan Davis because they thought that it's getting the heir apparent in that position with Fletcher Cox getting old. But you have a look at what some players, what some teams were able to draft in those positions at 124, 162, 166. That's giving up a heck of a lot for a player that a lot of people thought was the second best defensive tackle in this draft.
Just be careful about who you're calling old, Matt. Fletcher Cox is younger than me and you. So
I'm fucking old, mate. I'm feeling it after this weekend.
Cox?
He's 31.
He's only 2.5 years older than me. Wow. Now I feel old.
You know what? For me, this Philly game.
Make a point, Don, that he would have been there at 15. You could put £1 million on that. There was no reason to trade up and get him. No one was coming to get him, I don't think. So that was an awful trade.
So this Philly game, and Steve kind of mentioned it a little bit, in that this represents a big portion of our season. And I think it does. If you can beat this Philly team, then you can look at an 8 to 10 win season. I think if you lose to this Philly team, you're more in the 4 to 7 region. I think that's what they represent. Because knocking them off is a really good result for us, given how they're at the minute. So 8 to 10 is certainly possible if you can beat them. But below that, there are a lot of teams like them in this league, and if you can't beat them, then you're going to struggle to pick up wins.
I mean, at the end of the day, the NFL, whether you believe it or not, for me, is a momentum league. The momentum starts week 1. You win or you lose, and it can completely change where your season goes. Let's move on and talk a little bit about free agency. Steve mentioned it a bit earlier, but just in a bit more detail. They ended up letting go of Hassan Ridgway, Jannard Avery, Rodney McLeod, Stephen Nelson, Alex Singleton, and they brought in Hassan Reddick, 3 years, $45 million. Derek Barnett, 3 years, $15 million. Fletcher Cox was cut and then re-signed for 1 year, $14 million. His contract was insane before then, but it still took a whacking cap hit to cut him and then re-sign him. James Bradbury, recently added from the Giants, 1 year, $7.25 million. That could be a really shrewd signing. Kaiser White from the Chargers, 1 year, $3 million. Anthony Harris as well, 1 year, $2.5 million. He's only 30 years old. And Boston Scott got re-signed as well, 1 year, $1.75 million. Zach Pascal as well, that I missed, from the Colts, 1 year, $1.5 million. And then looking at how that affects the roster now, you slot AJ Brown into that WR1 position. Otherwise, the offense is pretty much completely unchanged. Pascal's some way down the depth chart. You mentioned that Jurgens may not really see the field too much. On defense, though, it's all changed. So Hargrave may well start at DT, but Jordan Davis is going to be pressing in for that. Kaiser White is projected to be a starter. So is Hassan Reddick, James Bradbury, and Anthony Harris. So this is a defense that was already good. And I would argue that Bradbury and Harris and Reddick make that team a lot scarier.
That's a top 10 defense. That should be coming top 10 in overall defense for me. Across the board, they've gone a different way to us. Like I said, they're going after experience. We've got all the young 22, 24 guys. They're going, like say, the later 20s, early 30s. But for me, that defense is pretty scary. I think the Eagles should be winning the NFC East off of that defense. They can hold multiple teams under 20 points, I think, and then let that offense kind of chug its way along nicely. Like I say, I'm still not sold on the offense. Jalen Reagor, not a very good season. The fans already are on his back. I don't expect him to deliver very highly. So the AJ Brown will take a lot of heat off Devonta Smith. That was a good acquisition. Pascal, he's a good wide receiver 3. Did stuff in the Colts. The run game can be pretty efficient behind a good O-line, like I said. I think the Eagles should be winning 10, 11 games minimum, as long as Jalen Hurts doesn't have a meltdown and just fall to pieces. If he's managed properly, that is a 10 to 12 win team very comfortably. So I am not looking forward to week 1 at all. I am very, very nervous. If we come out there and we lose like 40-15, I will have that first little mini panic red alert that will go on in my head like, that's not a good start. Like I said, that is a momentum crusher. So I'm glad to be playing them week 1. When everyone's kind of rusty in week 1, this is our chance to take a scalp. So that is the only saving grace for me, because that defense is pretty mean.
I forget the warning lights coming on. If we lose by that margin, I'll be disgusted. And for me, the thing here, this is going to be a trench warfare battle for me. Both teams have really invested in it, but we have an offensive line which is potentially top 5 in this league. Yes, Hassan Reddick may be there. Yes, Fletcher Cox may be there. Yes, Jordan Davis might be in there, but he's rookies. Fletcher Cox, as Matt says, is getting older. We have a potential top 5 offensive line here, which I would expect to be able to deal with that line. Yes, they're going to give us some issues, but given the amount of resources we've poured into that line, 3 first-round picks, a lot of money on Vitae, 3rd-round pick in Jackson, I expect them to go up and be able to dominate there. I expect them to help the run game get going, so you negate that secondary that you have there. And if I don't see that, then I think I'm within my right to start asking questions, because the lines don't ask for much. But we have, like I said, one of the top offensive lines in the league on paper, and it needs to start performing that way. And if it struggles against these guys, then I'm going to have a lot of questions. And conversely, with the defensive line, picks 2 and 3 in the draft last year, picks 1 and 2 in the draft this year. Romeo, lot of money. Charles, lot of money. Brockers, lot of money. Not like we've not put anything into them here. I expect to give them a test. So anything other than a big battling performance here, and to show that this trench warfare thing we're supposedly built on is working, I'm going to have a lot of questions, and I'm not going to be very happy at all. And I don't think that's unreasonable.
Yeah, I think this is like a really key watermark game. Maybe one of the things that's just flown a bit under the radar is James Bradbury, their acquisition in free agency. Like the Eagles have been crying out for someone to play alongside Slay because quarterbacks just don't throw to Slay. And I think Bradbury, he was a second-round pick at the Panthers. He's done pretty well in a fairly shit Giants team. He could be like a sneaky good acquisition in their second. I think this is a real big test because that defense is looks good, and we're probably not going to have Jameson Williams in week 1. In fact, I hope we don't have Jameson Williams in week 1. So yeah, big test, but it's one of those games that it's a benchmark for our coaching staff. It doesn't matter what the team spirit's like, how great they look on Hard Knocks. It's all about week 1.
Not going to ask for predictions now. We'll save that for later on in this off season, nearer the start of the season when we do our prediction show. But let's move it on to week 2, and we're at home again against an NFC East team in the Washington Commanders. And let me just load up my bits and pieces here. So, draftees for Washington: Jahan Dotson at 16, Fedarian Mathis at 47, Brian Robson Jr. at 98, Percy Butler at 113, Sam Howell at 144, Cole Turner 149, Chris Paul 230, and Christian Holmes 240. I'll go through their free agency as well. So the big guy that they lost this year was the twice tagged guard Brandon Sheriff, many people's second best guard in the NFL, I would say, behind a certain Colts guard. He was signed by Jacksonville to a 3-year, $49.5 million deal, so breaking the bank for him. They also lost Tim Settle, Matthew Ioannidis, Kyle Allen, DeAndre Carter, Jamil Douglas, Ricky Seals-Jones, and then they brought on board Andrew Norwell to replace Brandon Sheriff. J.D. McKissick got re-signed to a 2-year, $7 million deal. Cornelius Lucas also returned. Trey Turner came on in the guard spot as well from Pittsburgh. Cam Sims re-signed, 1 year, $2.5 million deal. F.A. Abada, the Brit, is now there, 1 year, $1.2 million, alongside Danny Johnson and Alex Erickson. They also lost quite a few other guys still available, including Landon Collins, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Eric Flowers, John Bostic, Deshaun Everett, Darrell Roberts, former line, Adam Humphries, Jared Norris, Torrey McTire, Najee Torren, Jalen Jelks, and Devontae Cross. Looking at those two boys before having a look at their roster, apart from Sam Howell, who I think might have saved this draft class a little bit, it's dire to me. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Jahan Dotson was a massive reach at 16. He should not be going there for me. He is not a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. I think he's a wide receiver 2. I think they literally have taken him at least 5-6 picks too early. I like Percy Butler. I would have been very happy with him in Detroit. He will fill the hole of Landon Collins. He's a very good safety. Like I say, he was good at Louisiana. But Fedarian Mathis, yeah, he's all right. He helps fill the holes there. They lost a lot in free agency. Like I said, they were not able to keep a lot of guys. So there's a lot of people there that they had a lot of outgoings. I weren't impressed with all that ingoings. Washington do not faze me. We've said this before, we've been stung, and I look who's under center as well. I have never trusted that quarterback. Like I say, you can make him flap so easily. He can hand the game to an offense or a defense on a platter on the opposition team because he can be very easily flustered. So this is a game that whatever happens in week 1, win or lose, we regroup. This is a game I expect to win. Like I say, there is no two ways about it. Like I say, I won't accept a loss to Washington because across the board, they don't faze me. And the run game, it's not that good. Antonio Gibson, yeah, he's not running back 1. Brian Robinson Jr., yeah, okay, that could be a major upgrade against the run game, but they did lose Schiff, like I say. So they have had holes in the offensive line that don't seem to have been addressed as a priority in their draft or free agency. So I think overall they got a little bit weaker.
Just a quick one, Ryan.
Yes, the t-shirt is
Yeah, there we go.
It's very,
T-shirt.
it's very comfy. Yeah. It's anyone wants to see what that says?
Yeah,
Yep, I'm wearing a nice medium, nice and roomy.
I love it. I think it looks amazing. I'm looking forward to getting mine as well.
Yeah, it does look
Good.
really good. First time chat from KDV1991. He says on Twitch, if our D-line gets good pressure, it should be a win against Washington, especially at home. And
Yeah, so one, I agree with Ryan there. I am expecting a win out of this one, not out of overconfidence, but if we want this rebuild to be taken seriously, we have to beat teams like Washington. Given the state they are in at the minute, they lost Brandon Scherf, and I don't care if Trey Turner came in, don't care if they drafted Chris Paul. Whoever comes in is a downgrade. He's one of the best guards in this league. And then you look at the tackles with Cosme and Leno, that ain't no special. Nothing special. And for the amount we've put into our defensive line, I'm going to be pissed if we don't really have a go at them in this one and really lay the law down on them. So I'm going to have issues there. Just to go back to the draft first before I talk about the team, I'm going to have to disagree with you here. I didn't really mention these guys when we did our first ones. I don't think I really looked at it, but I low-key really like this draft of theirs. I'm massively high on it. I like Jahan Dotson a lot more than you do. I agree with Ryan. It was a bit of a reach, but given everything that's going on with McLaurin, they don't know if he's coming back. They did need to take a better receiver in this draft as his insurance. And, they had to pay the piper to go up and get it a little bit. But I don't mind because I think Jahan Dotson is a great route runner. I think he's proven he's done well in college with a subpar quarterback, and he's not getting the greatest quarterback here, but he's shown that he can make production even without a great quarterback throw into him. Fedarian Mathis, he's like our he's like our own second round pick here. He's a project, and depending on what they do with him, depending on how they develop him, could potentially be a really good pick for them, but he's going to be one who's going to take time to adjust to this league. Brian Robinson's going to be really good in their backfield. I love that. I'm with Ryan. Percy Butler is also a good one. Sam Howell, I think, is going to wrestle that starting job off Carson Wentz by halfway through next season. That's my hot take. I think he's going to take that job off him because I think he can potentially be that good and Wentz can be that bad to necessitate that change. They also brought in Cole Turner. I'm already having nightmares about him getting put on our linebackers. That is going to be a mismatch to hell. We're really going to have problems with him on this day. I can see him having a Pat Freiermuth type game against us from last year when he put 2 touchdowns on us. But I am massively high on him. Same with Chris Paul. They've got themselves an incredibly good guard prospect who in 2 or 3 years is going to be the real deal. So I really like their draft, but I really like their draft more for the future rather than now, which is what pertains to us. I don't think we need to worry too much about it this year. But I think overall the team, like I say, that offensive line, if we can't make mincemeat out of that with what we have at our disposal and the players we have, then I'm going to be asking massive questions because the amount we have invested, we need to be putting O-lines like that to shame. And Carson Wentz, if you put pressure on him, it's shown that he's terrible. This is a perfect game for the likes of Hutchinson and Aquara if he's fit and Harris to really get after and that interior to break through. Because that guard unit is not what it was last year. I expect a lot from the interior in this one. So great draft from Washington, but I want to beat them next year and I'm not going to accept anything less than a win.
5 sacks. I want to pummel Wentz into the ground. I want to make him cry.
Yep.
I want to pummel him so bad that Howell has to come in for relief.
It's true.
Relief. Wow.
It's true. When your starting tackles are Leno, who burnt out with the Bears, who can't produce an O-line to save their life, and he couldn't even make it there, and Cosme, who's good, but he's only second year and he's a rookie. You can't really hammer home the advantage against that type of opposition, then you've got issues.
So I think Ryan said that if we lose to the Eagles, we're looking at a 4 to 7 win game season. If we lose to Washington, we're looking at like a top 5 draft pick, like without a doubt, because this is, I think, probably one of the worst 2 or 3, maybe not quite as bad as like the Jags. But, this is a bad team. And I don't think they've done much in the offseason to improve. I thought their draft was okay. I think, I agree. I thought they overdrafted Dotson. But there's just so many holes, and I think where Washington are good, it's through the air, because you've got Terry McLaurin, you've got Curtis Samuel, you've got Dynamy Brown showed a bit, but they've just got the wrong guy throwing the ball. Antonio Gibson is a decent running back. I would say he's one of the better running backs in the league, but last season he was so up against it because he was having to do it all on his own. This fearsome defense with Chase Young and Montez Sweat, it just kind of petered out in the second half of last year. They just kind of got worse and worse. And don't forget, they're in a bad division. So for me, losing to this team would be an absolute disaster, and we'd be looking at a 3 or 4 win season. Surely we've got enough to beat this mob. Surely. And further into Carson Wentz, I think he's one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. I agree. I think maybe not by halfway, but I think by the end of the season, we'll be seeing Sam Howell taking serious snaps. Wentz was awful at the Colts, and Colts is somewhere he absolutely should have thrived. Not only just his average play, but the way that he choked in that last game against the Jags. I mean, he should not be considered for a starting role in the NFL. So for me, this is a win for us.
Steve, your mic has just cut out there. Just say that again.
If you can't beat this lot, then there's a lot of questions to be asked about our depth chart.
So KDV has come back in with the comment: Washington are potentially the most meh team in the league, ? And I completely agree. It does come down to Carson Wentz. For me, he's not in my top 40, maybe 45 quarterbacks in the NFL. For me, Ryan Fitzpatrick, the previous incumbent, is light years better than this guy. I do think he's better than Heineke, but I just don't think that's saying particularly much. The rest of their starters, if I run that down, Wentz at quarterback, then running back Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, wide receivers McLaurin, Samuel, Dotson, Cam Sims, Diami Brown, Dax Milne, Antonio Gandy Golden. There's some names in that wide receiver room. Tight end, the former Lion, Logan Thomas. And then the O-line, it's not the best, but I'm higher on Leno than Ant is. This was a move when the Bears cut him, universally panned for cutting a league average left tackle. And as we all know, league average left tackles don't grow on trees. He was the best part of the really bad Chicago Bears line. And as we know from previous Lions teams, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, you're really only as good as the guys next to you sometimes. And I think he was a victim of the Bears as much as anyone else was. But he's at left tackle alongside the new signing Andrew Norwell, then Chase Roulier at centre, Wes Schreiter at right guard, and Sam Cosmic right tackle. That defense, though, fearsome it may be. Chase Young, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, Cole Holcomb, Jamin Davis, David Mayo, Kendall Fuller, Cameron Curl, Bobby McClain, and William Jackson. I think this game, apart from Wentz, is going to come down, as much as I love saying this every single week, to the trenches. If we can penetrate the interior of that defense, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, I am not a Jam Davis fan. I was coming out. He's ass. Absolutely. I was a big fan of his in the draft process because I overvalued athleticism. I overvalued athleticism, and he rose up boards based purely on his RAS score, and he massively disappointed last year. If he is the Mike linebacker, if Swift and Williams can get some good holes up front, we should torch these guys on the ground. So,
and likewise, if we can put enough pressure on Wentz, like you said, that wide receiver core is actually pretty good. I would go as far as saying really good. Even down to Diami Brown is a really good player. Even Gandy Golden, we wanted him last year. We would have been quite happy with him. Stop Wentz throwing to his targets and don't give him a clean pocket to do it in, because he can be semi-dangerous then. But, if you can't do it with the best running back in the league and one of the best O-lines in the league in Indy one year, then we shouldn't be allowing him to do it with Washington. That's for goddamn sure. Because his running backs ain't near as good. His offensive line is nowhere near as good. They should not be able to put a run game on us. And we should be able to get after him with reckless abandon. and really go after him. That's what this comes down to. And if you can't beat those tackles and that interior, then again, you have to question the signings we've made.
You really
Big time.
do. You really do. Right, let's move on to game 3. And we are in the division for the first time this season at Minnesota. KDV1991 now following us on Twitch. Thank you very much for that. Sorry, music in my ears as I'm talking there is very disconcerting sometimes. Minnesota. He's just subscribed as well with Prime. Thank you very much. So it did not cost him a penny, but putting a little bit of dough in our pocket. Much appreciated, sir. Right, Minnesota Vikings. Couple of in-division trades in there with ourselves and with the Packers, taking Lewis Seen at 32, Andrew Booth Jr. at 42, Ed Ingram at 59, Brian Asamoah at 66, Caleb Evans at 118, Azizi Otunwayo at 165, Ty Chandler 169, Vidarian Lowe 184, Jalen Naylor 191, and Nick Muse 227. Picking up picks all the way down, sacrificing the top end talent they potentially could have got. But as we all know, this draft not potentially very high on top end talent, so maybe they could make the best of it. We've discussed that draft class a little bit before. We'll get into that in just a moment. Just looking at their free agency as well, they've lost quite a few big names: Nick Vigil, Xavier Woods, Tashawn Bauer, Tyler Conklin, Mason Cole, Anthony Barr, Sheldon Richardson, Rashad Hill, Mackenzie Alexander, Dede Westbrook, Everson Griffin, Wayne Gorman, Chad Beebe, Jordan Scott, Chris Herndon, and Eddie Yarbrough have all moved on as it stands. Obviously, now they could all be re-signed back or what have you, those guys that are still unattached. The guys that have come on board, has it replaced all of them? I'm not sure.
Nope.
Zadarius Smith coming on from the Packers, 3 years, $42 million. Harrison Phillips from Buffalo, 3 years, $19.5. Jordan Hicks from Arizona, 2 years, $10 million. Chris Reed, the guard from Indy, 2 years, $4.5 million. Re-signing Patrick Peterson and Jesse Davis. Johnny Munt from the Rams, 2 years, $2.4. Chandon Sullivan from the Packers, 1 year, $1.75. Sean Mannion got re-signed. A couple of others in there that are inconsequential. Stepping back from this Minnesota draft, I can't help but feel that they just got the worst end of things. I think that their team potentially maybe slightly got better through this draft, or at least in future years it might have gotten better through this draft. But looking at what they could have got, looking at where they could have been, I think they didn't get as good as they could have been, and what they've lost in free agency has nowhere near been replaced by what they've actually gotten back. So I think this team is in regression, boys.
See, a big part of this comes down to that edge pair and whether they can stay healthy or not. If Daniil Hunter and Zadarius Smith are both healthy going into next year and play to the best of their ability, then every single team in the NFL needs to be on notice, because those two can wreck games in an instant. They are that good. If they carry on with their injury records and don't see the field like they have the last few years, then they are going to be the most expensive pair of burdens in the NFL. They have sunk a lot of money into these guys. So I think that is a big part of this Minnesota team this year. Can those two stay healthy and provide them with one of the best pass rushing duos in the NFL? That's how good they could be. So that's going to be the problem there for them. And like you say, they've lost a lot of other guys as well. I know Pierce has gone, the nose tackle, so the interior of that defensive line has taken a blow as well. And the draft, I ain't big on the draft. I think, Com got conned, as they say. This guy's meant to be an analytics master, but he certainly got rinsed by our GM. I think he got rinsed again partially by the Packers as well. And when your reward is Seen, who is going to be very good, don't get me wrong, pairing him with their current safeties there, that's dangerous. That's a good group they've got right there. But then getting Andrew Booth, Andrew Booth is a very good player, but he's had so many injuries at this point in his career already that the flags have got to be raised. He missed his pro days because he was getting surgery. He missed the pre-draft process because of surgery, and he's had that many surgeries at this point in his career. I don't know whether that's going to come off for him. And just looking down the list, they are potentially good guys. I don't see any really great ones, though. Maybe outside of a Caleb Evans, who I think is going to be a great player. I don't see a lot out of that, so I don't see where the the strength has come from there. I don't see where they've gotten stronger. The only thing in terms of where it comes to us is they were very far in front of us last year. Very far. So even if they've gotten worse, doesn't necessarily mean we've gotten better than them at this point. There's still a lot of guys you have to respect on that team, especially on the offense. Dalvin Cook's made our life miserable for years. Adam Thielen's made our life miserable for years. Hell, again, even the backups have made our life miserable for a long time now. So I agree. I don't think they've gotten stronger out of this process, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we match up against them, because I know for damn sure that we're better than the Bears this year. I'm interested to see where we match up in terms with the Vikings. It's going to show us where we're at, but I would like to be quite close against them. We beat them last year, got the first win there. So again, just like the Eagles is going to be a barometer of where we're at in division, Minnesota is going to be the barometer of where we're at, and it's going to be very interesting to see.
I think in terms of this Vikings team, this is a team like let's not fall for the hype. This is a team that's in a full rebuild. Like, you know, they've got a new GM, they've got a new head coach, and they've just cleaned out their defense. I mean, their defense has, you know, Mike Zimmer's just not got that defense to perform for a long time, and they've had a massive clear out. And yeah, they brought in Zadarius Smith, but is that the name that they kind of need? They've invested pretty much their whole draft. I think they took a guard in round 3, but other than that, pretty much all of their draft capital is on defense. So they're going to be, you know, absolutely trying to put the team together and trying to make that defensive unit gel. And this is a really, really good time for us to get to play them. Need to think about their situation in terms of the new leadership team. And they've got this new head coach, Kevin O'Connell. Now, to me, he's just one of these names that, you know, he seems to have got a promotion every year. I think if you look back at where he's come from, he was a terrible Browns team as a quarterbacks coach. Then he sort of did like a season with the old Redskins as like special projects, then quarterbacks coach, then passing game coordinator. And then he's gone to the Rams. He's been at the Rams a year. They've won the Super Bowl. And all of a sudden, you know, this guy's this huge name. And he seems to me one of those kind of like trendy coaches that has obviously aced his interview. But what's the substance behind that? Like, if you look back at the Browns and the 49ers in that period, outside of success with the Rams, and I think we all know where success with the Rams comes from, it's their star-studded roster and Sean McVay. You know, what I just can't see how this guy is qualified to be a success in what is a very tough division. So for me, this is going to be very, very interesting, because if the Vikings have got this position wrong, this could be an absolute disaster for them.
Quirky Zerky chipping in with a subscription at Tier 1, his 3rd month in a row. Many thanks to you, sir. Really enjoying your chat, especially in the Pride of Detroit Discord. I've been seeing you in there chatting away too. He says the Lions should be at least 3rd in the division, but 2nd if our health gets better and our defense gets to a respectable level. With how bad our team was last year, it took 2 game-winning plays for both victories. Our offense should be 10 spots better this year. We should win at least one, if not both of these. Ryan, Vikings.
See this draft. Some of it don't make sense. Like Ty Chandler, why? Dalvin Cook, when he's healthy, one of the best backs in the league. Alexander Mattison has now destroyed the Lions 2 or 3 times. One of the best backups, I think, probably in the league. So for me, he will see very little action, potentially in his rookie year, if ever. If things go to plan in that team, he never sees the field. So that one. Brian Asamoah, another pick that he does not fix any need. He's a total gadget player. He's a small 6-foot linebacker that played a lot of snaps at cornerback at Oklahoma. He doesn't even have a position. Where does he fit on that team? Because he isn't a linebacker and he's not a corner, like I say, and I don't think he makes a difference or an impact at least for a year or 2. Their biggest needs, like say cornerback, still, is a Caleb Evans going to come in day 1 and be a starter? Probably not. Andrew Booth, he is expected to. Like I say, he is going to have to be penciled in as probably no starting corners the first day because their depth a couple of years now has just got worse and worse. Like I say, Mackenzie Alexander never lived up to that hype, but manages to still cling on the coattails and hang around in the league, even though he's not an NFL starting corner. So those positions are there to be picked on. Like I say, they lost Barr, lost more corners. Patrick Peterson, he's barely 30% of the player he used to be. He is long in the tooth. I have seen him slowing down, losing multiple steps. He can now be picked on if you want to be aggressive and go after him. So they're secondary. Safety pair, fantastic. Everything outside is very much a work in progress. And I would love to throw the ball at them because I think that's where we can exploit them. I think teams will go and try pass the ball on the outside and challenge these young men thrust into starting positions that they're just not ready for. And I agree, the Vikings, they've tied so heavily to Kirk Cousins that, like I said, they've got to start this rebuild, but they just don't know where to. Like I said, they gave him that massive extension to bring down the cap hit now, but all they're doing is just kicking that can further down the road. Eventually, they're going to have to address this situation at quarterback further down the line, what's going to happen. But it's come back to haunt them. We can beat these to second place. Like I said, I'd be very happy to split with the wins with them this year. I expect to beat them at least once.
See, I'm now in sort of a quandary now thinking about it because I never stopped to think about it. But, Quirky Zerke was right. They beat us by a last kick field goal, and then we beat them last year with arguably one of the worst teams we've ever had. So I guess what is acceptable this year? Would we accept 2 losses against them? Would we accept a split? If we can split with them last year with one of the worst teams we've ever had, I guess should we be expecting 2 wins now, despite the talent they have?
Yes.
Well, I think if you look at those first 3 games, like 3-0 is very possible. Like it absolutely should be. If we're coming out the first 3 games like 0-3 or 1-2, I mean, that's just terrifying because we could not have got a better start, really.
Where are we playing? We're at Minnesota first, though, aren't we?
Yeah.
So that would be the one we'd likely lose the most. So
let's have a look at their roster in full. Their starters, according to ESPN. Quarterback Kirk Cousins, running back Dalvin Cook, as we've heard. Then wide receivers Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and KJ Osborne. Tight end Irv Smith Jr., who torched the Lions last year for 2 touchdowns, if I remember rightly, or maybe that was the previous year.
I thought he was injured all season.
Yeah, it was. That was the year before.
The year before, he did make.
It was Conklin who killed us last year.
Offensive line, for me, one of the worst in the NFL. Made slightly better by Christian Darrisaw last year, who I never believed in, and he proved me wrong. But Ezra Cleveland, Garrett Bradbury, Jesse Davis, and Brian O'Neill. It's long been said that Dalvin Cook succeeds in spite of that line, and for me, it just can't go on forever. At some point, he's going to need his line to come up good for him, and I just don't see it right now. At some point, we've got to put Dalvin Cook in the corner. The defense starters, Harrison Phillips, Dalvin Tomlinson, Jalen Twyman, Danielle Hunter, Eric Kendricks, Jordan Hicks, Za'Darius Smith, Patrick Peterson, Harrison Smith, Lewis Seen, and Cam Dantzler at the moment, not Andrew Booth, perhaps not expected to be fit for week 1, we shall see. It's a team of average players on the whole. Like that this is a team that has enough kind of good players. If you told me they won 9 games next year, I wouldn't be surprised. But if you told me they won 4 games next year, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, that's their spread for me.
I think the thing is stopping Cook, isn't it? I think that's where we've struggled over the years to beat them, is stopping that running game. I remember rightly when we beat them last year, we were a bit more successful stopping the run, and that's the thing with them. You've got to put the game onto Kirk Cousins, who I've long said is average and certainly not worth $48 million a year, which he's on at the moment. So I think that's the thing. But again, we've invested to stop this problem. And, we need to now start seeing the results of that, especially as, again, you've pointed out that the offensive line is not the best. So they should not be cleaving apart our defensive line. And we have the blitzing linebackers to come in and take him down. So hopefully it works from our favor that way. But as you say, it has got me thinking now, because I have considered the Vikings to be second in this division for a while now, and I don't think I would be disappointed if we finish third next year. I just not the Bears. Just please to God, not the Bears. If we finish below the Vikings, I don't think I'd be fussed. But thinking about it, if we beat the Eagles first week, and as I say, it's a confidence league, we could do it. We really could do it if we can knock them off and get the confidence going.
All right.
Do you know what? If you can't stop Dalvin Cook, it just opens up, Justin Jefferson and Thielen and gives Kirk Cousins options. We've got to stuff the run and we've got to put pressure on Cousins, because we know that when Cousins throws under pressure, it is wild. And that's the key to victory. We know what to do. This is a very, very beatable team, and we're playing them a good part of the season when it's highly likely that the defense won't have gelled. So I'm pretty confident about this.
Hot take, I think that wide receiver core is overrated. Adam Thielen is fantastic in the red zone. He's not very good anywhere else. He's always hurt. He's getting old. He's slow. He's basically a tight end. KJ Osborne wouldn't even make our top 4 wide receivers. I'd take Reynolds, Amon-Ra, Williams, and Chark over him. So it's Justin Jefferson and Ireland for me. I think as a whole we've got a better receiving core. I think it's overrated. It's stopping the run because Dalvin Cook and, like say, Alexander Mattison for the last few years have made us look like dickheads, and I'm sick to death of it.
All right, let's move on to week 4 at home for the third time in 4 games against the Seattle Seahawks, potentially one of the worst teams in the NFL right now. Their draft went something like this. Charles Cross at 9, Boye Maffey at 40, Kenneth Walker III at 41, Abraham Lucas at 72, Kobe Bryant at 109, Tariq Woolen at 153, Tyreek Smith at 158, Bo Melton at 229, and Derek Young at 233 in free agency. They lost a few guys, but perhaps not a huge amount of guys that were moving the needle particularly. Ethan Potchich, Blesson Austin, Rasheem Green, Gerald Everett, Bobby Wagner, the big one, DJ Reed as well. But then other guys as yet not signed: Dwayne Brown, Carlos Dunlap, Brandon Shell, Benson Maiwa, I have no idea who that is, Alex Collins, a few other guys in there. The big move, apart from Bobby Wagner and DJ Reed, of course, is the trade of Russell Wilson, where they actually picked up some draft picks that they lost when they traded up for other people when they thought they were in their window. And they're in full rebuild mode, aren't they, boys? I mean, how much hope can this Seattle team have to avoid the number 1 overall pick?
I think there's a good chance, given that Carolina and Atlanta exist. I think there's some really bad teams out there this year. I mean, just in Seattle's case, first the draft. Again, this is another draft I really, really, really like. And if I'm a guy who loves my developmental upside over immediate startability, then I am jizzing all over this draft. I mean, you look at Charles Cross, Boye Maffey, Abraham Lucas, them 3 alone, ceilings are so damn high with these guys. And it's so funny to me that for years they've let Russell Wilson die behind a line which they'd never invested in. And then they draft 2 tackles in the top 100 who could potentially be very good there. They finally decide to protect someone, just not the franchise quarterback. But even after that, in Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen, you've got 2 high-level potential NFL starters there at cornerback. That's 2 amazing picks for where they got them there. And even going down further, Bo Melton has a lot of promise at wide receiver as well. So their future is in very good hands with some of these guys here. And I think they're going to develop into some top-class guys. Their immediate future, however, is grim. It's potential number 1 pick grim. You say they didn't lose many guys who moved the needle there, but I mean, Bobby Wagner and DJ Reed themselves, that's 2 big ass gaping holes lost in that defense now. 2 leaders of that defense who've been there a very long time. They set the standard, and that's huge. Russell Wilson, who's the only reason they've been relevant for the last few years now because of the way he plays, gone. They're now rolling with Drew Lock. as it stands. And, you know, what's the best left on the quarterback market? Jimmy Garoppolo? I mean, it's not going to get much better for them there. And again, there's a lot of developing time. You know, you've still got guys like Metcalf. You've still got guys like Tyler Lockett. They're going to put points up on people, which is why I don't think they'll get the number 1 pick, especially if Rashard Penny stays healthy and plays the way he did last year. I think they're going to be able to put enough points to win games, whereas the Panthers are just hopeless. But yeah, as far as, you know, as far as them and us go, we need to be winning this. I know we've said, you know, the Seahawks have been a great team for a long time, but facts are facts. They're a long way behind us now, a long way in some of the most vital positions as well, in the trenches, at quarterback. They're all the way behind us. And I know they gave us a hiding last year, but big part of that was down to Russell Wilson, Rashard Penny. Our defense been obliterated by injuries, and it's going to be healthy this year. Our offense is going to be healthy this year. And, you know, they're not a match for us, I would say. And, you know, setting ourselves up to get hammered again, but we should be winning this, and we should be winning it comfortably. But fair play to the Seahawks for the draft. They've not drafted well for a long time, but this one, they really, really, really did well with it.
Geno Smith has got to beat out Drew Lock. If you can't beat out Drew Lock, you should just join the XFL. I said to a Seattle fan today, like, picking up between 2 quarterbacks, it's picking, like, do you want to kick in the dick or do you want to slap across the face? Because Drew Lock should not be starting in the NFL. He's dog shit. Like I say, he is a terrible quarterback. The team, the draft, as Ant says, really good. Kenneth Walker, going to be such a sneaky good pick because Chris Carson and Rashard Penny, they basically have shared ownership in a hospital wing because those two basically own real estate in IR because they never fit. Rashard Penny will probably be on IR by the time we even get to this game, or Chris Carson will pick up a knock. So there's a good chance that Kenneth Walker will win one of those jobs very quickly. And behind an O-line that picked up Charles Cross, there's potential there for a good 2-headed, 3-headed running back monster. So, and Geno Smith actually showed him relief last year that he's kind of serviceable because he knows the offense and the scheme really well. They will dumb it down. They will keep it simple. And when you've got Tyler Lockett on offense, you're really dangerous for me. For me, he's leagues and above DK Metcalf. I would take Tyler Lockett over DK Metcalf any day because I just think he's one of the most underrated players in the league for everything he does. He's such a hard worker. The defense, a lot of holes. Losing Bobby Wagner is awful. The Legion of Boom is boom, poof, it's gone. Like I said, that is history now. They need to decide to move on and stop talking about that because it's long gone. Like I say, if we'd have had the money, I'd have thrown money at Bobby Wagner. Like I say, he's an already in all Hall of Famer before he retires. So that is a huge loss. Who is going to fill that hole there? I have no idea. Jordan Brooks, I questioned that draft pick 2 years ago, but he actually has turned into a really good defender. He has been pretty solid. So, as I say, the future, long term, looks pretty bright. They just need to find a quarterback and probably a new head coach because I don't think Pete Carroll is here for a rebuild because, like I say, he's got the persona and the attitude to be young and faithful, but he's about 70 as well. Like I say, he isn't going to stick around this forever. So this is a crucial year. The Seahawks, I think, are in contention for probably a second pick. I agree. Like I say, Panthers, they look the worst team to beat right now.
I mean, this is 4-0, right? I mean, it just seems so obvious. Like there's no way that we can lose to this Seahawks team. But we said that last year. I mean,
we didn't.
No, we didn't.
Did anyone say we were going to beat the Seahawks last year?
I thought that
it.
we were going to beat the Seahawks, but I said it in hope rather than expectation.
They had a difference maker back then.
I think I predicted it. I think I did say so.
If you look at their quarterback depth chart, Geno Smith, Drew Lock, Jacob Eason, this is one of the few QB depth charts in the NFL that, you know, Tim Boyle and David Blau could make a run at, you know, and that kind of says it all, doesn't it? I mean, I don't think we need to say any more about their offense than that because, yeah, you've got Lockett, you've got Metcalf, you've got Rashard Penny, who, you know, we made look like Walter Payton. when he played us. And yeah, they've obviously got Ken Walker in the draft, but I mean, just the quarterback situation alone, in terms of if Aaron Glenn can't out scheme this offense, then we are going to be picking in the top 5. And yeah, there's some big holes on defense. I completely agree with the boys. Like, I think the draft was really good. For me, this was one of the top 5 or 6 drafts. I really liked it. So, they do have some talent, but again, it feels like a good team to play at this stage of the season when they're going to be working a lot of stuff out. And you would have thought that we've got the momentum that we should be absolutely taking this lot apart.
Looking at their starting roster at the moment, quarterback ESPN have is Geno Smith, not even Drew Lock now. So they're expecting Geno Smith to start. Running backs, even running back 4, I think, is good. DJ Dallas, I think, has shown good things in the league so far. So they're 4 deep at running back pretty well. Wide receiver, not so much. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, but then Freddie Swain. They've also got buried in there Dwayne Eskridge, who I know Ant was a big fan of, Bo Melton and Marquise Goodwin. So they've got some depth pieces, but perhaps beyond DK and Tyler, perhaps not much top-end talent. Former Lion Nick Bellore in there as well, alongside Noah Fant, who came along with that trade alongside Drew Lock. And then that O-line, as Ant said, not much invested until the quarterback leaves. It's Charles Cross, Damian Lewis, Kyle Fuller, Gabe Jackson, and Jake Kerr. And on defense, they are Darrell Taylor, Poona Ford, Quinton Jefferson, Uchenna Nwosu, Cody Barton, Jordan Brooks, Joel Iguabin. I can't say that. Joel Iguabin. Yes, something
Just
like
say
that.
Joel. We know.
Joel. Hi, Joel. Trey Brown, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, and Sidney Jones. Also worth mentioning, they picked up Justin Coleman in the offseason to be their backup slot corner. What fun.
To put it in a nutshell, that Seattle offense is like a Range Rover, but it's like having Katie Price at the wheel. You're going to end up in court.
I was just about to. Well, I wasn't about to say something similar, but
Audio clip that shit.
yeah, I was about to say something very similar. Not like that, but that Seattle offense with a good quarterback is like potentially a B+ offense. You got to take the offensive line into consideration. That offense without a good quarterback is like a C-. That's how big the difference is between that offense with and without Russell Wilson. And yes, there are still legit game changers there, but with the guy under center there, they are that much weaker because of it. So, if you're ever going to beat them, this is a year. And if you can't beat them this year, then you're going to start asking questions, big questions.
Moving into the second quarter of the season now, and we are going to New England, unfortunately, but someone has to do it. Looking at the Patriots draft as we go into the AFC for the first time in this rundown. How did the Patriots do in the draft? I wonder. Cole Strange at 29. Tyquan Thornton at 50. Marcus Jones at 85. Jack Jones at 121. Pierre Strong, 127. Bailey Zappi, 137. Kevin Harris, 183. Sam Roberts, 200. Chasen Hines at 210. And Andrew Stuber at 245. That's a net 929 places lost in terms of losses against the consensus draft pick position. In free agency as well, losing potentially one of the biggest guys in the entire offseason in interception leader J.C. Jackson going to the Chargers, 5 years, $82.5 million. Also losing Brandon Bolden, Jacob Johnson, Carl Van Noy, Brandon King, Ted Karras, Donta Hightower, Jamie Collins. We remember him fondly. Troy Fugamali, Terrence Hall, De'Eric King didn't even make it very far, and Liam Shanahan. But they did bring on Gunnar Olszewski.
Matt Patricia. Don't forget Matt Patricia. That's a big off-season addition.
They let Gunnar go.
Did they let Gunnar go already?
He was their special teams ace.
Oh,
they
beg your pardon. Yes, they did. Sorry, yes.
Is it Cleveland or somewhere?
Pittsburgh. Beg your pardon. Thank you. They brought on Jabril Peppers, though, 1 year, $2 million. That's cheap as chips. Terrence Mitchell, 1 year, $1.75 million, and they also brought on Ty Montgomery, 2 years, $3.6 million, perennial useless player, as well as re-signing Trenton Brown and Joanne Bentley. A particularly low-key free agency period, having spent a huge amount of money last year, the league record last year in free agency spending, so understandably low-key perhaps, but big losses in there. Kyle Van Noy is a leader of that defense, really, and he's gone. JC Jackson, who are they playing at corner now? Ted Karras, big part of that offensive line, and they seem to take it upon themselves to take the biggest reaches that they possibly could at almost every single position in the draft. Is this the end of Bill Belichick? Slowly but surely.
This is definitely a contender, a serious contender for worst offseason of any NFL team. And they are a very strong contender for this one. You know, to not pay JC Jackson, I know Bill Belichick doesn't like to pay his guys like that, but I mean, still, guys like him are rare, and you have to have centerpieces around which you build your defense. That's what made the last Patriots defense so good, and it's what's made them so good over the years. They've always had the leaders on there, like the centerpieces to build around, and they've kind of just let him go and not really tried to replace him very much. They bought Marcus Jones in the draft, but it's not a like-for-like replacement, I can tell you that for free. It was perplexing, and it just sort of smacks of someone who's done well for a long period of time, but now it's kind of over and the weaknesses are starting to come out. I mean, you can still never say never against him. You know, one of the greatest, probably the greatest coach of all time, but the way this offseason has gone has been incredibly bad for them. The draft, now I want to take Pierre Strong Jr. out of this because he doesn't deserve this. He was actually a damn good pick by them. I don't care if he was overpicked. You know, me and Ryan both love Pierre Strong Jr. and we really hope he succeeds there. The rest of them, baffling. Really, really baffling. Love Cole Strange, not where they picked him. Stuber was a lot better value at 245 for the guard position if that's what they wanted to do, but it smacks of a draft that's got the influence of someone in it who has been influenced by Bob Quinn, i.e. thinks they're the smartest man in the room and is, you know, beating all these other teams around him with their superior knowledge. And of course, we know there is someone in that room with influence now who has been with Bob Quinn for a long time. And I think Patricia's had some form of input into that. I think he has to have. They have drafted poorly. That Tyquan Thornton pick is one of the worst picks of all time. I said last year it was Schwartz when the Browns took him. That's not even close to this one, how bad it's going to be. Patriots have become awful. You can never count them out, ever. But this offseason's been atrocious for them. And they are a team that is there to beat this year. Absolutely 100% there to beat. We usually do pretty well against them as well. So I'm confident going into the fixture with them this year that we can do something against them because they've lost a lot of talent and they got no immediate starters really in this draft.
Steve, perhaps a contender for fourth in the AFC East.
I mean, you can see that the AFC East, which they've absolutely, you know, had a stranglehold on for so many years. I mean, it would be hard to pick them finishing anything other than third or fourth. I mean, the Jets are flat to deceive with several, you know, draft picks over the years. But, you know, I mean, Buffalo and Miami should absolutely top this division. And we'll see how the Jets rebuild goes. Having said that, going to Boston in week 5, you know, it doesn't matter who's on the roster. This is like going, you know, to Castle Grayskull, isn't it? And facing Skeletor head on with his strange henchmen on their mobility scooters.
Or ATVs.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just one of those
What's that?
games.
An old twat vehicle.
It's just one of those games that you're kind of watching it through closed fingers because we just can't be losing to teams like the Patriots yet. The Patriots have ground out results against much better teams than the Lions. Yeah, I agree with everything the boys said. There's no one on the roster that frightens us. Our secondary by now, having 4 games to warm up, we should be eating Mac Jones for breakfast. But you just fear the bill, don't you? You fear the bill.
Ryan?
Oh, forget Benjamin Button. This is the curious case of Bill Belichick, isn't it? Like I say, it's impossible to work the guy out. Like I say, I don't understand where their priorities lie. JC Jackson, the last 2 years, has probably won them a handful of games. Single-handedly, he has closed games out because he has been a magnetic ball hawk and he is a linchpin of a defense. So to decide to, in the last 2 years, throw a load of money at 2 tight ends that are massively overrated, to realise that, like I say, they put a second-round tender on him 2 years ago. They knew he was hitting the market, but they decided that they were not going to do anything about it. They were going to spend money elsewhere. They were going to decide that, hey, we don't need one of the league's best corners, that our enigmatic team will be able to make up for that. In his position, he decided to draft an Arizona State corner, Jack Jones, one of my boys. He is not a replacement. And I hate to break it to any Patriots fans watching it, don't expect him to be a replacement because he's not going to be. So, but at the same time, it's like I say, he's playing the Patriots. Like I say, we're never going to make it easy. Do I expect to go there and win? No. But do I think we can win? Do I think we should possibly have a chance at winning? Yes. Because like I said, there's a lot of positions that don't faze me. If you take away that 40-yard dash, Tyquan Thornton is a 6th-round wide receiver. And that's where he should have been taken. Because that's probably what the level of production you're going to get from. Because look at what happened in Keel Harry. Like I said, he took a guy that could have dominated the NFL. He went into a system where it just didn't work. He didn't fit. And it's been a car crash ever since. Like I say, people go there and their careers either bloom or they die. Like I say, it's very a do-all or do-and-die scenario. So I agree there. The Dolphins are very difficult to work out. I don't know if they're going to come 4th or top because you don't know what's going to happen with them. The Jets, I don't think the Patriots are bad enough to come below them. So I think it's going to be a secondish 3rd rounder. I expect Buffalo to sweep them with their eyes closed and a hand tied behind the back.
Yeah, so, I mean, I just think they're trying to field a team full of Joneses. It's really weird, but they've got 3 Joneses at corners. They've got Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, and Jack Jones alongside Mac Jones at quarterback. It's going to be really hard. It's going to be... And Jones picks him off. He passes it to Jones, who goes through Jones, and Jones is there. And then Mac Jones passes the ball for a touchdown. It's going to be really, really confusing. But
maybe they're trying to expand into the Welsh market.
Aye, for Jones. Right. I don't know what that was.
The Jack Jones 5.
There it is. Let's have a look at their starting team at the moment. Quarterback Mac Jones, running back Damian Harris, wide receivers are Devontae Parker, Jacoby Myers, and Kendrick Bourne. That is burying Nelson Aguilar, Tyquan Thornton, and N'Keal Harry down there, as well as Ty Montgomery. What is the point in all of them? Tight ends Hunter Henry and Johnny Smith, despite the fact that they play one tight end the most in the league. Offensive line, Isaiah Wynn, Cole Strange, David Andrews, Mike Onwenu, and Trent Brown, who they picked up for a 5th-round pick, potentially one of the best moves of the offseason, low-key. On defense, Deatrick Wise, Christian Barmore, Davon Goodjoe, and Lawrence Guy, Matthew Judon, Jawan Bentley, Josh Uche, Terrence Mitchell, Kyle Duggar, Devin McCauley, Jalen Mills. This is a team that's defense. We know it well. We saw it here. It's not built to get pressure up front. It's built to contain the run and win by the secondary. And that secondary doesn't scare me at all. Like, who are you? Who are they? They got Jalen Mills down there, who's a conversion, and he's fine. But you're asking him to be cornerback 1 now. It's going to be an absolute disaster. And that O-line, I mean, it should be good because it's a Patriots team. But you look at it on paper and it might not be. And the waste of money that they had last season, Nelson Aguilar on a massive contract, Johnny Smith on a massive contract. I mean, this is roster mismanagement of epic proportions. And at the end of the day, I really do think this is the beginning of the end for Bill Belichick. There was a take on the podcast done by the Draft Network. On Friday, they do takes on takes. And the take was, there is a 25% chance that the Patriots sack Bill Belichick this season because of what's happened and how bad this team is. And they're going to do what the Dolphins did to their legendary head coach in '95, who I
Shula.
Shula.
And they all unanimously bought that take, and I buy it as well. I think the Patriots could go 3 or 4 wins this year. Like, you're only trusting in Bill Belichick to somehow make this work, because if he proves himself to be human just once, this team is fucking awful.
I disagree.
They'll move him upstairs, though, won't they? They won't get rid of him. They'll just move him upstairs.
I don't think it's that bad. I think the offense is pretty decent, actually. I mean, that run game wrecked the Bills last year. You know, don't forget that game where they just absolutely ran over them. They've got the same running back group there. Mac Jones is a good quarterback. I hate to say it. And he does have some good weapons to throw at. And that offensive line is good. Onwenu and Trent Brown on the right-hand side, that's a really good pair in there. Onwenu was injured last year, but, you know, I think he was in Rookie of the Year contention when he was back in his rookie year there. He's a great guy. So I don't see them struggling to score points. Like you say, it's just what's that defense going to do? And, you know, history would say that even when they're doubted, they somehow manage to scrap their way out of it. I do think it is a bridge too far for them this time, but I'm not sure they're 3-4 win bad, but I think they're maybe 6-7 win bad. I do think they're at that sort of area. I think the offense is too good to lose them that many games.
Bill Voldemort Belichick will only go when you destroy all his Horcruxes. Starting with David McCourty. He must be some sort of magical item. He's old enough to be my granddad. He probably remembers the first ever Jubilee.
Right, let's move it on to Game 6, which is at the Dallas Cowboys. Our last game against the NFC East by Game 6. So getting them out the way early, the NFC East. Travelling to Dallas and looking at their draft, it went something like this. Tyler Smith at 24, Sam Williams at 56, Jalen Tolbert at 88, Jake Ferguson at 129, Matt Waletzko at 155, Daron Bland at 167, Damone Clark at 176, John Ridgway 178, and Devin Harper at 193. Looking at a free agency, they were quite active. They lost Keanu Neal, Malik Turner, DeMonte Casey, Greg the Legs Erline, Maurice Candy, Cedric Wilson, Connor Williams, and Randy Gregory, as well as Lyle Collins and Brent Urban. Also still available out there that they lost: Blake Jarwin, Ty I have no idea who that is. Right tackle, 36 years old, apparently. Corey Clement, Francis Bernard, Hunter Niswander, a couple other people with Darian Thompson in there as well. They brought back Dorrance Armstrong, Jaron Kearse, Brian Anger, Dante Fowler. They signed Dante Fowler from Atlanta. They brought back Leighton Vander Esch, Carlos Watkins, Luke Gifford, and then they signed Ryan Knorr and James Washington to fill that hole in the wide receiver core. It's a patchwork job here, boys. They've lost a lot. That wide receiver core is not what it used to be. And low-key, I dislike this draft heavily. Tyler Smith could be a good player, but well overdrafted for me. Sam Williams could be a very good player, but overdrafted for me. Both could bust, and I would not be surprised. Jalen Tolbert, probably my favourite pick of the lot. Jake Ferguson, I know, was at one of Ash's favourite players at the tight end position, but otherwise, it's a bunch of meh for me, and there's no doubt in my mind that this team is substantially worse than last year, especially with trading away Amari Cooper for a 5th-round pick. What is this wide receiver core? They're going to be relying on their defense a lot this year, boys.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate that Randy Gregory also screwed them after they'd announced he was re-signing with them and decided to go elsewhere after they made it public? Can we just appreciate that
That was
fact as well?
funny.
That was beautiful. They had to retract everything about it. That was hilarious. I don't know. Is it like a prerequisite of a Cowboys draft that they have to draft a bad egg? They have to draft someone who's potentially going to go into that
Sam
locker room
Williams.
and destroy
He's
it,
an
because
asshole.
Sam Williams, yeah. We've talked about this with the turn up for what guy who came on with us, and he was just as perplexed. He's like, no, hang on, not him, other one, Cowboys one, not the freaking Texans one. I completely ballsed up there. Whoever the Cowboys one was who came on, because we talked to him about it, and we're like, what is it that means they have to take a player who's going to be so damn disruptive? Because that is what Sam Williams is. He's a locker room disruptor in a bad way. And he could be potentially a great player here, but they love their players who cause locker room disharmony, which is what they can't really be doing with at this point in time. And yeah, outside of that, the draft was meh. I mean, I did like the Tyler Smith pick. I love the Jalen Tolbert pick. He was a big favorite of mine there. Matt Willetsko, me and Ryan both liked him on there as well. Obviously, they've taken a red shirt with Damone Clark, but even Ridgeway was pretty decent, the nose tackle from Arkansas. So they've brought in some decent pieces there, but again, you're relying on a lot to go right to get hits out of them. But if they do hit, then they'll be good picks. So I think it wasn't one of the worst drafts by a long stretch of the imagination. I just think some of the picks were perplexing, but they got some really good players in there. But I don't know what to think with the Cowboys, because the Cowboys with Amari Cooper, I would have said, would have kicked our ass easily. And I still feel like they're going to kick our ass easily despite their losses, because Dak Prescott is a really good quarterback. Obviously, with Zeke and Pollard, they've got a great backfield there. They still do have some good receiving options. I do like CD Lamb. I think he's going to step into Cooper's shoes and stand up there. And that defense is potentially quite good on its day. So I still feel like they're going to kick our ass, but I feel like they got worse overall. So I hope we are able to stick it to them and give them a good game. But I'm still not expecting us to beat them.
See, that defense for me, it's got a lot worse. Losing Keanu O'Neal and DeMonte Casey, like I say, but bringing back Jaron Curse, that safety room does need work. And Diggs, like, I get it, Diggs is an exception leader, but Diggs also gives up hundreds, if not thousands, of yards. He's another Armani warrior. You take the really good, you get some really bad. Like you say, he gets absolutely torched at times, but he also is in positions to make plays and get the ball. So. And their cornerback too, I'm trying to remember it well last year. Was it Malcolm something? I can't remember. Bit of a liability there. The secondary for me is weaker. Like I say, they didn't upgrade that much there. And another move, Dante Fowler, that reeks of desperation. How does he keep getting more chances? Because he's been awful everywhere he's been. Like I say, he does not help that position whatsoever. He probably makes it worse, if anything. Parsons needs some help on the other side, because they lost, let's say, Gregory. Let's say they need a bit of juice added. So Sam Williams, let's say, has to step up. He has to mature, because the level of maturity at Ole Miss was not there. So someone needs to come down on him and come down on him hard. Because they've spent a second round draft pick on him. That's high capital. Jalen Tolbert, great play, good pick. Can he replace Amari Cooper? That is very much to be seen. Like I say, they have lost a lot of talent there, and they only got a fifth rounder. CD Lamb, I like the player, and I'm not sure if he can take that mantle as that elite, dominating wide receiver one. Even I think he's really good. That's a lot of responsibility for his shoulders, and I've sometimes questioned the attitude and level of maturity, like I say. So, but I think we'll win the game? Probably not. No, I think it's going to be a real struggle, because they can score quick and they can score heavy when they want to, but then at also times they can totally dumpster fire. It's going to be another game, like I say, because Dak, games usually come down to him. Zeke can be very up and down. Like I say, picks up knocks. But Pollard, for me, I think he's the better back right now. Like I say, the last year or two, he's come into his own. Pollard, he's a very serviceable guy. So they brought, like I say, Matt Willetsko, a good addition to an offensive line that's lost some pieces in the last few years. It's still a good team, and they'll still be the front runners for the NFC East going along with Philly. So it's going to be a tough game, that one. It could go either way, but I think in positions we can be there to exploit them. I think we can pick on that secondary across the board, spread out. It's not the best.
this point, okay, so we're 5-0 going into this, yeah. I think we're all agreed we're 5-0. I think this is kind of at this point the best team that we've faced in the season. But this is very much an 8-9, 9-8 team. I don't think this is a team that's gonna be in contention whatsoever. Like the Cowboys will finish 8-9, 9-8 because they're in the NFC East and no more. Zach is like blows really when he blows hot, he's like absolutely dangerous. And having, CD Lamb, Michael Gallup in the backfield when Zach's blowing hot is really going to be a danger and a big test of our secondary. I've also got both Zeke and Tony Pollard, and Alexander Matheson earlier, and you can exactly see where if we can't stop the run, how badly we can get hurt. I think their defense is pretty good, but it's probably only like a bit above average. So this is kind of a team that if we can beat the Cowboys, I think in Dallas, then all of a sudden that kind of, are we going to finish third or maybe beat the Vikings for second? If we can beat the Cowboys, we should be absolutely on track for a winning season because they are the kind of probably like mid benchmark of the league in terms of like an average team. There's nothing that they've got really that particularly frightens me, but we just have to be competent and play well.
I mean, at the end of the day, so someone was saying we'll still have Michael Gallup and CD Lamb, and it's like, okay, but CD
Gallup's
Lamb...
tore his ACL.
Yeah, so...
As well, like I said, Gallup's like sick.
Hang on, in fairness, Detroit fans were clamouring for Gallup in January. They were
but that doesn't mean
absolutely
it was
clamouring for him.
The same people who want to Gallup are the ones who said that Jameson Williams is not going to be the guy because of his ACL, and I don't really understand the dichotomy of that position, but there we go. Starting offense, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, CD Lamb, Michael Gallup, James Washington, Dalton Schultz, Ryan Nung, Tyron Smith, Tyler Badiash, Zach Martin, and Terrence Steele. On defense, DeMarcus Lawrence, Carlos Watkins, Neville Gallimore, Dante Fowler, Devontae Bond, Leighton Vander Esch, Micah Parsons, Anthony Brown, Jaron Kearse, Malik Hooker, and Trayvon Diggs. Obviously, some people buried in the depth there as well.
If you're starting later, Esch and Fowler, that one side is I'm going to attack that side all day because I think they're liabilities.
So Quirky Zerky says Dallas is trying to be the Midwest Raiders in terms of just picking bad eggs. He said, I don't think their defense can handle our offense, and this should be our Arizona game this year. Not expected to win it, but we do. Steve O says Dallas's defense it's 3-4 defense might be tough to deal with if Parsons and Williams are coming off the edge. I see that. That could be tough to deal with. One Pride 40 says he likes the Sam Williams pick. In Dallas, yes, they did sign, Steve, they did sign James Washington from Pittsburgh. And I'm a Washington believer. I think he showed some good things in Pittsburgh buried on that depth chart. But is he going to see the field again?
I think the only thing I'd say is when one of your starting edges is Dante Fowler, if my offensive line, which is bloody good, is giving up any sacks in this game or is giving up any amount of pressures in this game, then the alarm bell should be ringing big time, really big time, because that front four in their defensive line, if they are playing a front four, is not great, and our line should be making mincemeat out of that. I think I would fancy that to be a very high scoring game. I would fancy that we could really get the run going on them next year and really score a lot of our points there and not have to worry about throwing at Trayvon Diggs, but then I would expect their offense to do the same to us. So, but yeah, that is one where the line needs to be solid AF and be given no pressures away whatsoever against that caliber.
All right, moving on to game number 7 of 8 on this episode. Now at home against the Miami Dolphins. Only 4 draft picks to talk about from the Dolphins because of the amount of action they had on their off-season. Channing Tindall at 102, Eric Izukama at 125, Cameron Good at 224, and Skylar Thompson at 247. in free agency, they lost Justin Coleman. Disaster for Miami to
Oh
the
no!
Seahawks. 1 year, $1.1 million there, as well as losing Matt Collins, Philip Lindsay, Jacoby Brissett, Duke Johnson, and Greg Mance, as well as yet unsigned by anyone else, Will Fuller, Alan Hearns, Albert Wilson, Malcolm Brown, Michael Pallardi, Jason McCourty, and Trill Williams. They lost Jesse Davis as well, so it's Min, not Meyer. They either re-signed or signed Terran Armstead, Cedric Wilson, Connor Williams, Chase Edmonds, Keon Crossan, Durham Smythe, Alec Ingold, beg your pardon, Teddy Bridgewater, Melvin Ingram, Raheem Mostert, Sony Michel, Thomas Morstead, John Jenkins, Trent Sherfield, and Brennan Scala, as well as obviously the blockbuster trade for Tyreek Hill from the Kansas City Chiefs. It's been a very active offseason for the Miami Dolphins, and it feels like to me that when I've looked at other people looking through their schedules, that people are heartily drawing up the Miami Dolphins as an easy win, perhaps looking at that quarterback. But have a look at this roster, and it's sneakily one of the most loaded in the entire NFL. They got a lot better. And it really comes down to the quarterback, because if he can put it together, there's no reason he can't do the Mac Jones thing of just being reliable and putting it in the right place, and suddenly this team looks very, very good.
Not even the quarterback. I mean, they've completely revamped their running back room. They've brought in Raheem Mostert. They've brought in Sony Michel. They've brought in Chase Edmonds. I mean, Jesus Christ, them three on their own are dangerous as anything. I mean, that was where they struggled last year. They were really digging down the depth chart for running backs last year, and it's really what let them down. But they've gone out this year. I mean, Sony Michel's just won a Super Bowl. Chase Edmonds had a great year at Arizona. And, Mostert, we know if he gets back to health, he's one of the most dangerous running backs in the league. And they've got him for peanuts. Add that they've brought Teron Armstead in from the Saints, who's on his day is one of the best left tackles in the game, period. He really is that good. The only problem with him is availability. He will miss a few games, but then Tyreek Hill has come in there. They've invested in everything, and they got Izukanma in the draft. I think he's going to do well. Lions fans really wanted him. I would expect him to develop well there. I do like the Channing Tindall pick that late as well. So they didn't have many picks, but the first two I think were good ones. After that, sorry, Skylar's going to be gone by the end of the year, and no player from Cal is going to be any good in the NFL this year. Cal were awful. So Good's not going to do much, but they revamped that offense and they did everything they needed to with it. That running back room is as dangerous as it gets. The wide receiver room is good. If Tua's even half decent this year, then that offense is going to be bloody difficult to stop. It's got that many. You just think Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert fit and healthy. Those two alone are a matchup nightmare. I mean, how the hell can you scheme both those guys?
Well, and Jalen Waddle.
Putting around it. Jalen Waddle. You go, let's just throw Chase Edmonds and Sony Michel in there. I mean, how can
wide receiver 3, Cedric Wilson, is like a major problem.
Yeah. And I believe they've got another tight. They've got Gesicki there as well, haven't they? I think still at tight end, who's had a decent year as well. So that I've not seen a single Lions fan say the Miami game's going to be an easy win. I think it's going to be potentially one of our hardest losses of the year. I think they're really going to whip a beating down on us. It all depends on what happens with that defense. But again, I look at that defense there, and again, I'm still seeing a lot of decent players knocking round. So yeah, I think that's a loss, almost as guaranteed a loss as we can get next year.
It'll all come down to QB play. I think they even upgraded backup quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater on his day can be better than Jacoby Brissett. So if by now the fans have turned on Tua, which I fully expect them to, because anytime he does anything wrong, someone wants to put him down like a racehorse with a broken leg. They just turn on him. The media and the fans just seem to really dislike him. So by now, let's say that he's either one, injured, or two, he's been benched. Like I say, Teddy Bridgewater can put the keys and start that offense. Like I say, it's full of loaded weapons. He can manage that offense just as well as Tua probably can. So I don't see as, like I say, the QB play, they could potentially get better with the backup. So I don't chalk this up as a win either. I agree. The big weakness, like I say, is how well they're coached. I don't know anything about that new head coach. That Mike guy, like I say,
Daniel,
it all comes down to how well they're going to be managed off the field. I think is going to be a key factor in their season, because I don't know what kind of things he's going to implement. But on paper, like I said, they didn't lose too much in off season, but then they did also bring in some good players and make some good additions. So for me, they got stronger. Their expectations, they should be expecting to challenge the Bills. Like, they should have good expectations. If they're not competing with the Bills and trying to split that series at the minimum, then something's probably gone wrong for them. So I expect that we're going to struggle in this game.
I think the only saving grace from our point of view is, again, their front four is not the greatest. So how often can they get at the quarterback and make an impact on that? So I think that would be the one issue to highlight with them. And if we're going to have a chance against them here, it is, dominating on that front and being able to put points up on them to keep up with what they're going to put down on us. So, but yeah, I agree. I think they're going to be second in that division after the Bills, possibly challenging them, I reckon.
Yeah, this Dolphins team, I mean, so many weapons, so many additions. They've had a fantastic off season. But they kind of remind me of one of those kind of like media darling teams that are like fundamentally massively flawed, but have got loads of upside. A bit like, say, like the Broncos or the Raiders have been in the last couple of years. And like I said, the media spends a disproportionate amount of time talking them up about how good they're going to be. But I can't see this team challenging the Bills, like no way at all. I think they're going to finish second in the AFC East, and they could scrape a wild card, but they're not going to beat the Bills unless something goes seriously wrong in Buffalo. However, this is going to be a team that does put a lot of points on, up on the board, and could absolutely hammer, like really hand out a couple of beatings to teams who can't cope with the defense and can't scheme against Hill and Waddle. I think Tua's just going to dink and dunk his way through this season and just hope that they get the yards after the catch. And when you've got, Tyreek Hill, Waddle, Mostert, Chase Edmonds, Sony Michel, there's enough people to throw to that are going to make those yards after the catch. For me, this is all about our offense. You hope that by now, I think this is week 8, that Jameson Williams is back and that we've had time to gel the offense. So for me, this is getting at their defense. I think their defense is absolutely fallible. They've kind of been like okay over the last few seasons, but kind of inconsistently okay. I think this is where we need to open up the playbook on this Dolphins team, because we're going to be leaking points at the other end. I think this is going to be a really high scoring game and possibly one of the most like entertaining. I'd love to go over and see this game. Like, this is one of the games I've kind of like marked in the calendar as one that'll be like a really good watch.
So I think it comes down.
He will slaughter us.
I think it comes down.
I think that'll be it. Start a tight end of fantasy football that week, I think.
I think it all comes down to Mike McDaniel. You mentioned him before, Ryan. At the end of the day, this guy coaching under Kyle Shanahan at San Francisco, is he going to be like every other offensive coordinator for every other offensive genius head coach, where he gets the role on the basis of knowledge that he is mimicking, that he knows like the back of his hand because his boss taught him it? But does he actually understand the why? Does he understand the why enough that he can actually come up with his own stuff? And I mean, let's not forget that he's taking over from one of the better defensive minds in Brian Flores, who worked wonders with this defense at times in the last couple of seasons. What happens if that defense regresses? I mean, at the moment it's playing greater at the sum of its parts, but it could really fall away next year. I mean, both sides of the ball could get much, much worse. So, I don't know. It's one of those where the roster looks good. I believe in it. I actually think Teddy Bridgewater could do really well here. But part of me just doesn't believe in them because I don't believe in their head coach. All right, let's move it on to our final game. game number 8, our first game against the Green Bay Packers. At home, week 9, game 8. And let's have a look at the Packers draft, which I think we're all fairly high on in difference to some national media. Quay Walker at 22, Devontae White at 28, Christian Watson at 34, Sean Ryan at 92, Romeo Doubs at 132, Zach Tom at 140, Kingsley Enagbare at 179, Tariq Carpenter at 228, Jonathan Ford at 234, Rasheed Walker at 249, and Samori Toure at 258. We've waxed lyrical at times about how good that draft is actually for the Green Bay Packers. Looking at their off-season, their free agency additions and losses, they lost Oren Burks, Henry Black, Zadarius Smith, Chandon Sullivan, Tyler Lancaster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Dennis Kelly, Isaac Yiadom, Billy Turner, Corey Bojorquez, Lucas Patrick, and Equanimeous St. Brown, and also still unattached Kevin King, Jack Heflin, Chauncey Rivers, Eli Wolf, and Kurt Benkert. They re-signed or signed Rasul Douglas, Pat O'Connell, Robert Tonyan, Jaron Reed, Sammy Watkins, and Keyshawn Nixon. Of course, the really big story in this offseason, well, the two of them. One is that Aaron Rodgers returned to light it up one more time, to run it back one more time for the second time. But this time, not with Devontae Adams, who decided, fuck you, you're a prick, and went and played with Derek Carr at the Raiders after being franchise tagged. Boys, it feels like a sneakily good draft. Quay Walker, overdrafted. Christian Watson, boom or bust. But the potential is really there, and some really nice picks later on. Doubs, Enagbare, Tom, Walker, Toure, Carpenter. All really nice depth pieces. But potentially the worst wide receiver core in the NFL. I mean, at least in year 1, it could be the worst wide receiver core in the NFL. It could be worse than the Bears, and that's saying something. You know, is there the potential here for the Lions to actually spring an upset if we can perhaps get a handle on that running game?
No. To put
Oh,
it
thanks
quite
very much.
brightly-
That's the end of the podcast. Good night.
Yeah, there we go. To put it quite bluntly, I think the odds of them going 6-0 in the division this year are high. I think they've dominated the NFC North for the last few years, and I think the gap's got bigger. Yes, I know Adams has gone and he's not there anymore, but when you can get Marquez Valdez-Scantling a $30 million contract with the Kansas City Chiefs, when you can lift a guy as bad as him up to that sort of level, getting that sort of deal, that just shows you what they can do with nothing. And, they've got some good weapons here in Christian Watson, in Samori Toure. They picked up, 3 potentially really great receivers in this draft. And
Can I make a point?
You can.
How can you say that the gap's got bigger when they've got Christian Watson and we've got Jameson Williams?
Because, right. So the areas of their team where they struggled last
And
year,
they've lost Devontae Adams.
They've lost Devontae Adams, yes, but they've got Devontae Wyatt in this draft. They've needed a tackle to pair with what's his face? Yeah, Kenny Clark, forever and a day. They've probably got one of the best tackles in this draft positioned next to him now. I know Key Walker was a reach at linebacker, but they've brought Rasul Douglas back in there, who had a good year for them last year. They're putting Key Walker in there as well, so potentially that linebacker room is stronger. I mean, there are other problems they solved. Yes, they do have a problem at receiver now, and there is a potential for them to have growing pains in there, but they did bring Sammy Watkins in, so they've got the experienced guy there. They've got Randall Cobb still, and they've got Alan Lazard. Well, see, we laugh at this, but I mean, you look at what they've done to Lazard. They've turned him into a wide receiver 2 and a damn good one, and he was nothing at one stage. Robert Tonyan was 2 years ago was one of the best tight ends in the league because of what they did with him. And I'm not, just because Devontae Adams is gone, I'm not going to start getting complacent and thinking, oh God, it's going to be a terrible room there now. I've seen what they can do. I can see what they can do on that offensive line. They've brought in some really good offensive linemen in this draft, especially development projects. They've already got a ton of depth on that line already. And we know how good it is. We know how hard it is to get to Aaron Rodgers. They've got a force field around him, and you can't get to him. And they've got Bakhtiari back this year, which is just going to make it even harder. So I know they've lost Adams, but I think overall they've solved some of their long-standing issues in that team. And yes, they're resetting at wide receiver, but it doesn't really matter. When you've got Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon running your backfield, that's set. At tight end, they're potentially set there. Now Tonyan's going to be back and fit again. DeGuara's fitting in well there. I just think that overall, they're the team to beat still. And we've said the Vikings have got worse. The Bears have definitely got worse. They're going to be basement in this division. And yes, we're getting better, but there's still a long way to go till we're Green Bay. And, I know we beat them last year, but there was a half when they didn't have all the guys. I'm not taking away from that. I still think we beat their team there and we did very well with it. But I don't know. I think the gap's got bigger. I honestly do. And I think we're going to hate this draft in 3 years' time. I think we're really, really, really going to hate it as Detroit Lions fans. So, I'm not throwing the Kool-Aid down here. We all know that Green Bay are the standard in this division. And I think, they've just reloaded and they've got better.
I mean, Steve, it feels like you got something to say.
I just think that because they've gone 13-3 for the last 3 seasons, you can't not give them respect. But it just feels to me like, this is like the Wizard of Oz with fucking Aaron Rodgers there pulling the strings. But at some point, the curtain's going to be pulled back and there's going to be nothing behind it. And is it going to be this season? Because to me, they've, say in terms of the gap's widened, I just don't think it has. I think it's a huge gap, but for me, it's got to be closed. I mean, I understand, they've made additions on defense, but they've lost Zadarius Smith and we've gained Aiden Hutchinson. I just think if you look position for position, there is no way you can say that the Lions have not massively improved in terms of one-on-one matches. This is all about coaching. And every year, Matt LaFleur pulls our pants down with the aid of Rodgers. And I just think that this is going to be one season too far for the Packers because, it's been funny watching social media. I know, Ant in particular, you enjoy the social media back and forth. I mean, it's just been Packers fans and Bears fans arguing on the internet on who's got the worst wide receiver room. And there's no smoke without fire. And no one's turning around and going, but what about the Lions? Thank God that we've not got the Lions receiver room. That chat's not about. This is all about how bad are the Bears and how bad are the Packers at receiver. And I just think Rodgers is going to get caught out. He's just signed a massive contract, an absolutely eye-watering contract. And rather than go to OTAs and help out his wide receiver room and Christian Watson, he's dicking about playing golf with Patrick Mahomes on the American TV. It doesn't smack to me of someone who is serious about doing the business. I just think he's turned into a celebrity and the whole circus is around him. And at some point he's going to get found out. And I just hope it's this year. And I hope we're the ones to do it.
So 12 months ago, what were we saying about Green Bay? I think some of us had a win over Green Bay, even in the beginning prediction season. So what did we say? That wide receiver room is trash after Devontae Adams. If you can match up him successfully, then you're going to blunt the offense. That's what we were saying this time last year. They had what? MVS, the bad St. Brown, Lazard, Notonyan was injured, and we're like, oh yeah, they're going to struggle. They worked pretty fine this year. They it was a really good offense, apart from when it came to the, game against San Francisco, which was funny as hell. But during the season, they made gold out of nothing, didn't they? And I just think now they've potentially got more. They got more shots this year. Not all these guys are going to bust. And when you've got Daubs in there, when you've got Watson in there, when you've got Torre in there, you got second year Amari Rogers. Didn't really see much of him last year. They only need to hit on one or two of those guys to go with Cobb and Watkins, and then we're back to the same old story again. That's why I'm just not writing them off. It's the same with offensive linemen. When Back went down injured, we thought, oh, there's a chance here. They just trained up fourth tier linemen to be all pros. It's what they do.
Ryan?
I think losing Devontae Adams feels like when Stafford lost Calvin Johnson. Everyone assumed the Lions would be terrible. But if anything, I always said it made him better because then he was forced to learn to spread the ball around and get through his progressions and further reads. I think Rodgers will relish the opportunity to look at a whole field, totally fresh set of receivers. I think they've actually got better across the board. Like I said, MVS, I thought was arse. Equinemius St. Brown was inconsistent. Lazard, okay. I think he will relish the opportunity to have the likes of, say, Watson, Daubs, Torre, these big, strong, lanky, athletic guys that have come in with all got their issues and chips on their shoulders. I think this is going to be a really big opportunity for Tim, and I think he's going to really enjoy it. I think he'll take this year extra serious now to prove that he was the reason that Adams looked so good. So I don't know. I don't expect that we'll win because I'd say Sean Ryan, good addition to offensive line, and AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones is one of the best pairs of backs in the league on their day. They are thunder and lightning. They will wear down a defensive line very quickly. And I expect to possibly get gashed by the run yet again, which will open up the pass. And by now they've had time. These receivers have probably gelled with Rodgers as well. It's week 8. They've had 2 whole months of playing together. So if they're not in sync by now, then they never will be. So I think I don't think the gap got bigger. I don't think the gap got smaller. I'd say it probably stayed still for now. And this is our chance to make a little bit of progress on them. It would be a big shock to me if we won this matchup. But I don't think we'll get blown out. I think we can be a bit competitive in this game.
Sorry,
I'm about to say, I know it seems like a lazy take to keep making all the time, but again, this is one that requires so heavily on the trenches to come through and win it for us because, that front 4 D line for them, you've got Rashawn Gary, you've got Preston Smith, you've got Devontae White, you've got Kenny Clark. That's a dangerous, deadly front 4 who can do you a lot of damage. If your offensive line, which is one of the best in the league, potentially can step up and nullify that, goes a whole long way to help him beat them. Because quite frankly, I don't want Jared Goff to be throwing at Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, Adrian Amos, all this. I don't want him throwing against them. You need to beat them through the trenches, get the run game going, and conversely on the other side, there has to be a day when we can breach that offensive line because sadly it's very good. And as Ryan alluded to, Ryan's now there, Tom's now there. They got a third tackle who I really liked. I can't remember his name. They're just putting so much depth and time into that. Rasheed Walker, yeah, at 230 something stupid, and that is you have to start breaching that line. Aaron Rodgers has been kept upright far too much in his career, and again with the amount of resources we've put into our defensive line, we need to start troubling the elite offensive lines in this league. And this will be a huge test for Hutch because hopefully by this time Hutch will be, gaining experience, integrating into the game. He has to show that he is a game-changing number 2 pick from the draft. And this is the kind of game where he really needs to stand up and be counted and lead by example. So, if we can somehow win in those trenches, then you maximize your odds of winning this one by a lot because that's really their strength this year and really where they're going to pulverize a lot of teams.
So let me run down their starting team. On offense, quarterback Aaron Rodgers, running back Aaron Jones, wide receiver Alan Lazard, Christian Watson, Sammy Watkins, tight end Robert Tonyan, and the offensive line, left tackle David Bakhtiari, then left guard John Runyon, centre Josh Myers, right guard Royce Newman, right tackle Elgton Jenkins. Starting defense, Dean Lowry, Kenny Clark, Jaron Reed, although I suspect that will be Devontae Wyatt, Preston Smith, Devondre Campbell, Quay Walker, Rashawn Gary, Eric Stokes, Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage, and Jair Alexander. On defense especially, that is just a group of people I do not want to be facing every week. But I think that Rodgers and Adams elevated each other. I do not think that Rodgers made Adams. I think that they made each other. I think that in many ways, Adams was a saving grace of Rodgers for a long time. There's a reason why he farmed so many receptions, and that in itself allowed MVS and Alan Lazard to get free more often than they would otherwise, because you have to double or triple team Adams. So with Adams gone, you can spread your defense a bit more evenly. That should allow you to have better coverage against these frankly rank average receivers, some with upside, but will Watkins play more than 4 games this year? I don't know. Will Lazard go missing? Will Watkins catch anything? Randall Cobb is one of the slowest, most useless players in the NFL. Amari Rodgers, I see the upside there. I can see Amari Rodgers do very well. Dubs, I can see do very well. But these are guys who might not see the field by week 8. We don't know how this is all going to go. We talk about their depth, but their depth ain't playing. I believe that this Packers team, at best, stayed exactly where they were. Strengthening in areas that they were weak, weakening areas in which they were strong. And the Lions, who beat them in week 18, and for all those people saying, well, they were resting players. Yeah, resting players in the second half. We beat their first team in the first half as well. We beat their team in a game that mattered to the Packers because they were going for seeding. We beat them. So we've gotten better. I don't think there's anyone who thinks the Lions have gotten worse compared to last year. The Packers haven't gotten better, but I just think, yeah, okay, depth is fine. If they get injuries to their starters, they have better people replacing them. But you can only play 11 players at once. And that wide receiver core is not good by any measure.
You've got to take expectations into account, though. Last year, there is no pressure on us at all because it's the end of the season for us. We can go out there and play freely. This year, there are going to be expectations for our players to go out and win games. There was none of that last year. Last year was a throwaway year where it was more about developing players and trying to get the cohesion there going forward. This year, we're going to be expecting them to win games. And when you're coming in to a game against the Packers, when you are, wanting to win and wanting to put off a statement, that shifts things dramatically. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it really is. And they've been there and done that. They've got the coaching. They've got the vets in there. I think we've closed the gap, but the gap's that big that it's still an insurmountable one.
Who got the bye last year? Was it the Packers or the Bucks?
Packers got the bye.
Packers did get the bye. Maybe I was wrong that game didn't matter. I thought there was a chance that they didn't get the bye if they lost that game, but maybe I'm completely off.
Because I think Rams get second seed, but I don't think the Rams could pass them.
No, Bucks got second seed because they were also 13-4.
Yeah, but did the Bucks beat Green Bay? Or did Green Bay beat the Bucks? The Bucks tanked Green Bay in week 1, didn't they? They absolutely destroyed them. I have to go and watch that game. There might be a blueprint there. Bucks absolutely leveled them first game last year.
Steve O says Rodgers was doing the same thing way before Adams got to Green Bay. Yeah, but with a much better wide receiver core than this back then. I
think you're completely underestimating him here. I really do think you are. He's made a career. He made Randall Cobb's career to start with. As a round 2 pick. He's made Devontae Adams as a round 2 pick. Who's the other one? Jordy Nelson, round 2 pick. Made these guys incredible what they are, and they didn't necessarily have the depth then either. The trouble is this year is they've got a lot more potential to shoot this year. Adams had to be good last year, and he was, and the supporting guys were good. But like I say, all it takes is Watson to be good this year, and you've got your next problem going forward, and you do have depth there as well. And you can't forget the offensive line. I know I harp on about it, but he gets so much time in that pocket that it's hard for defenses to be able to marshal players for so long. So that's an even bigger part of the problem. You've got to solve about getting at him. And I mean, this D line as it stands of ours right now, how do you think it matches up against the Packers front 5? I think it's going to struggle, even with all the stuff put in there. He's going to have a lot of time to throw to his guys, and our secondary is still very raw, and that's where the issues come in. If
So
we
I
can
think
make
we
a dent there, then if we can get Rodgers panicking into his throws a little and throwing them quick to inexperienced receivers, that's where you do it. But you've got to beat that line, and for the last few years, we've had absolutely no answer to it in games that matter. It was just the blowout we did some, but the blowout didn't mean out to them.
So I think you can all agree that we've backed up today our name of the podcast. What part of 8-0 do you not understand? I think we can all agree that that is the expectation going into this first half of the season. But seriously, guys, not looking at any individual games, what sort of record at this point are you looking for in terms of saying, yeah, I could see that that's a success at this
Plus
point?
5. I think we've got to be plus
5 and 3,
500.
4 and 4. I'd say 5 and 3, 4 and 4. I'd say I'd be fairly happy.
We've got to be at least plus 500. If we're not that, then I would have concerns. I guess it depends on the manner of the game. I mean, if you lose very close games to the Packers, the Dolphins, the Eagles, sort of games where you're really competing and you're just missing out, that would make it more palatable. But I still think you have to be plus 500.
Our second half of the season is definitely harder than the first, I think, because I think we've got the Bills in the second half.
We get to play the Bears twice, though, and that's 2 wins.
We do get to play the Bears twice. I think we're away at the Giants, which for some
Bills
reason
on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. And I think we're away. I think we played the Packers at Lambeau in the last game. So, like for me, I can see that something like 6-2 is a possibility. Like it's an absolute possibility for us if we approach this in the right way and we get the breaks and we get our players who are injured fit. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing? I think if it's in less than 4 and 4 against this kind of like strength of schedule, I'll just be honest, just be absolutely on the floor. I'll be inconsolable.
So for me,
Sorry, go on, man.
I'm going to be actually slightly lower. I know I did the Kool-Aid podcast with Ant earlier, and I just basically went mental on how high I thought the ceiling was. But if I now do bring myself down to earth a little bit and look at expectation, there's enough teams on this that I just go, yeah, I think they've done badly. I think they've gotten worse. Do I expect us to beat them though? Like really, truly, deeply, do I expect them to beat us? I'm going to worry if we're at 2 wins or less, and if we're at 3 wins, I will accept it, but I won't be happy. Anything less than 3 wins is unacceptable. 4 and 4.
We're at home. We're at home at 5 of those 8 games. We're at home.
So you would like to win at least 3 or 4 of those, preferably.
Home games: Philly, Washington, Seattle, Miami, Green Bay.
Ooh.
It's not the easiest. It's not the easiest. We've all said Green Bay's hard, Miami's hard, Washington, nah, Philly should be hard. So 3 of those 5 games we've all said are hard. And then the away games are never easy no matter who it is, but Dallas, New England, Minnesota. Like, if you told me we lose all of those away games, is that shocking? I think it's shocking. So I think Steve's right. I think the ceiling, 6-2, 7-1, absolutely I can see it. But the floor's pretty low too.
I think the thing is this year though, I don't think, and like we've had to endure so many bad years. I don't think a floor that low is acceptable. I know that's what it potentially could be, but it's absolutely not acceptable for the Lions this year. We can't be winning 1 or 2 games out of those first 8, or I would be questioning the new regime. I would, because frankly, I'm fed up of rebuilding all the time, and we've got a lot of talent in this team. We started winning games towards the end of last year. We started showing we could compete. In that Cardinals game, we showed we could compete with teams who on paper were a lot better than us. And we've only gotten better this off season, so I expect that to carry on going forward. And I think, we need to be demanding results out of these. Now, you say, we can't go to Minnesota and win. We can. We beat them last year, and we've agreed on this pod that they've gotten weaker this year, depending on what happens with the pair of edges and us getting better. We should be able to go there and win that game. And at home, we should be able to beat Washington. We should be able to beat Seattle. We'd be expecting to. We've got to start expecting now, not just hoping. Otherwise, this rebuild is never going to go anywhere. So, like I say, if it is below 500, then I will outright start questioning the regime and how it's going on, regardless of how they play. Because this year, the only currency that matters is wins. These players need to learn how to start winning games. And if they don't, then this rebuild will never get underway.
Time to finish this one up, boys. Any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Going into this season optimistic, and it's really difficult to know how we're going to approach this season. And like, you look at what Vegas is saying in terms of the odds, and I think, our over and under, what they predict, is it 4.5?
No, not that low.
5.5, I think, in
Maybe 5.5.
I think it was.
I think it's shifted after the draft. I think it's shifted.
It just strikes me that if we can't beat that over, then that it's just going to be such a crap season, because I don't think any of us are in a position where we think 5.5 games is going to be, as Ant said, acceptable. What would you consider acceptable? I would say 7 and 10 would be acceptable.
Yeah, 7.
Seven.
7 is a
wins
minimum.
is my.
Because if you think we were 3 field goals away from 6 wins last year, it wasn't like we were far off winning more games, and that was with one of the worst rosters in this team's history, which we all said in some areas it really was. The rookies stood up, they played well, they developed. We're getting our senior players back this year. Deco will be fully healthy, Ragnar will be fully healthy, TJ will be fully healthy, Romeo will hopefully be fully healthy. That there has to come a time when we make that step forward. And we can't just say it's year 2 of the rebuild, it's acceptable to have another top 5 pick year. Not acceptable. Not acceptable. And I will be on that hill to the end. I will be very interested to hear them. I mean, I don't know if Campbell and Holmes, they won't come out and say what are the expectations, but I want them to come out, and if they do, be ambitious. Say we want to compete. We want to go out there and cause upsets and beat teams and win games and be looking at trying to play meaningful football later in the year, because I think that's what we need to be doing.
Just quickly, article on Sportsbook Wire, so I guess that's a cousin of Lions Wire. 2 weeks ago, Detroit Lions 2020 total win total best bet. As per Tipico Sportsbook, over under 6.5 wins, over plus 125, and they are backing the over on that. So that's where we're at recently.
I would agree. I think that's fair. I think an acceptable floor for us this year is 7. And
there we go.
I don't think that's asking a great deal, because it's still a losing season by a decent amount. It's not asking much, but it is tangible progress moving forward.
We must have one of the easiest strength of schedules in the whole
5th.
league.
I think it's 5th. Yeah, it's 5th easiest strength of schedule, mixed with our end to last year, mixed with this abundance of rookie talent and decent vet presence we've got in here at the positions that matter. 7 is not a big ask, and I will stand by that. And that is what they need to be aiming at. Any less, we need to start asking questions, because we are a very pro-Lions pod. We get called slappies a lot, but we do have expectations. We just understood last year was a write-off. This year is not, especially with how weak this division is, with the Bears been potentially one of the worst teams they've had in a long time. You've got to make statement wins against them.
Right, any final thoughts, boys? Anything else?
How many days till the season
Everyone said fuck
starts?
the Packers, yeah?
100 days is it now? 101 days to go?
Oh, is it?
Something like that.
We get
Anyway.
college a few weeks before, so football's back soon enough.
Football is back soon. Right, that's the end of the show, guys. Our next episode, this time next week, Monday, June 6th, looking at the second tranche of teams, the next 9, roster and draft look. Rule the Lines College Football Podcast on a hiatus still at the moment, but should be coming back shortly, boys.
Brian's worked out a really good guest for us, or he's getting there with it. So
Is it
potentially
Katie
got
Price?
some really good stuff coming up. Teaching us how to
You
drive
do it.
Land Rovers.
She'd do it if we paid her. She's got a bankruptcy court hearing, so she needs the money.
Throwing the shade today, boys. Right, don't forget to follow us on our socials. Rule the Lines UK on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But just remains for me to thank my co-hosts and Ryan, Steve. Thank you to everyone for listening, along live or on the audio pod. We'll see you next time in the Royal Lions Royal Lions UK podcast. Let's go Lions, one pride.
Hala Madrid.
One pride.
7 and 10. Here we go.